The following is a presentation of the Force Center podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the Force Center podcast feed, and this particular episode is the Andor Report.
Oh, yeah. Ding, 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 ding.
I was so curious to see if you would remember that on our report shows, you usually make some noises.
I do.
I mean, that was really impressive. That was like a second and a half pause, and you were right in there with the sound of a reckoning.
The important thing about yes and is there's not necessarily a rush on it.
It's yes and ellipsis, ... Yeah. Well, that was absolutely great sound of reckoning. We are super excited to be here to discuss the new Star Wars show, Andor. Of course, the first 3 episodes were released on Disney Plus, and we are very excited to discuss them. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. Really, really excited. This is a show that, gosh, I think we heard about it 4 years ago, a show that has faced a lot of, well, why would we want that? The guy dies. And the conversation of it has changed, and to finally be here. And then to still see that the conversation's still going to change about the show because it surprises in so many ways. I've been waiting for this day, and here we are.
Yeah, the good conversation going around of like, hey, remember this was announced in 2018? Reminder, not only of the sort of time warp of the pandemic, but how long it does take some of these projects to get up and moving. We are very glad it's here. We're going to try to get into it quickly because we're going to talk about this for a while. There are a lot of rich ideas, a lot of fun and whimsy, breaking some new ground from Star Wars, but also paying tribute to a lot of the classic underpinning ideas of Star Wars. Plus, we get to talk about 3 episodes at once. It's episode 1, 2, and 3, all written by Tony Gilroy, all directed by Toby Haynes. Toby Haynes is a British television director, and he's done work on all sorts of things. Some critical episodes of Doctor Who, Sherlock, Being Human, Black Mirror, Jonathan Strange, and Mr. Norrell, and now Andor. There are no episode titles. We have so much fun with The Mandalorian and with the Book of Boba Fett discussing kind of the double, triple ambiguous meanings of the titles. How do you feel that there are no individual chapter names for Andor?
A little bummed. I'll be honest, a little bummed, but I have no problem with it. It just seems like Gilroy. I'm not picking on Gilroy. I'll try to avoid that. I think Gilroy's just a character. He's become a character in Star Wars, and I just love that he's like, I don't know, it's episode 1 because it's 1 of 12. Okay, there's the meaning. There's the meaning.
Yep. I will always love, and it's going to come up a lot in our discussion of Andor, that there is a great variety of what Star Wars can be, a great tension of what Star Wars can be. And, Luke is starting off with its big meanings, big ideas, which I think are really explored in Andor, plus just the love of pulp. Attack of the Clones, The Phantom Menace, Revenge of the Sith. And it is great to see a creator like Tony Gilroy who's like, ooh, I love all these ideas. I am not calling, the first episode Baptism of Fire, not leaning into the pulp. Although, definitely there are some pulpy moments, which are great.
Absolutely.
We always want to approach this as fans as well and share our experience as fans. We like to set the scene of our viewing experience. Ken and I were lucky enough to get screeners for the first 4 episodes. What was your experience of watching the first 3 episodes on a screener? When did you do it? Did you do any ritual to it? What was it like?
I'll tell you what, we always try to be honest, and you're right. You use the word fortunate. We are. We were not invited to the premiere event, and we hung out with some of our friends who were invited, and that's totally fine. I'm not going to lie. It stings a little bit sometimes for reasons that are just all petty and ego driven. So I waited to that night. I was like, all right, I had him for like a day or 2, right? And I was like, I'm going to watch him the night that everyone else is watching him. So I can feel my stupid ego will feel a little less bruised. But you're right. We're very fortunate, and I don't want anyone to think otherwise. But yeah, I sat down, but you can only watch them on your computer, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And you go through a very it's a hard process to get to them now. They have this thing, and you have to sign an NDA. It's almost like breaking embargoes or circumnavigating embargoes is an effort you have to make if you're going to do that. And
there's no ambiguity that that you should only be viewing this yourself.
Yes, and my email. I'll never forget my email because it's just all across the screen. It was nice last night to watch it see Cassian's face with not Napzok, blah 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 on it. It was, but it was fine and it was fun, and I actually spaced them out and only watched 2 Thursday. And you and I both will share the story of not watching the 4th episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 3rd, I'll talk a little bit, but I watched it Friday before I had to go to a comedy show and perform. And that might have been a bad decision.
No.
Might have been a bad decision. Though I had a great set, so maybe it was a wonderful decision.
You needed to be in that place of emotional truth, upset that you were flying away from Marva in order to do comedy.
Yes, that's the last thing I saw 3 times. I watched that ending 3 times and then drove to the comedy show with that music in my head.
I love the idea that Cassian was saying, B, could you please tell Marva I'm sorry, but I have to do a set at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank. That's a great and honest journey. You know, I was trying to decide what day am I going to set aside, and I thought about watching at the same time as the screening that was going on, the red carpet, but just I wasn't in the right headspace on Thursday. So I got up on Friday morning and I was like, I'm going to make a ritual of this. And I went through what action figures I have because I don't have a Cassian figure. One is on order right now. But I set out my Shore Trooper and I set out Admiral Radis as some kind of future friends and enemies of Cassian. Excited for his debut because I like that ritual.
Yeah.
And I sat at my desk and pulled it up, and I felt very, very lucky to have these. I watched them on Friday morning because already from the some of the embargo lifting and some of the people, evading embargoes, little things are starting to trickle in, and I was like, I don't want to get any spoilers. So I felt very lucky to watch them. I was deeply sucked in, despite the fact that yes, the watermark is your email, large and across the middle of the screen. So I'm sitting here watching this show and being like, this is tense. This is absorbing. This is funny. This is shocking. And half the characters have my email address as a mustache. This feels disrespectful at best. So again, very lucky to have the screeners, but it is not optimal viewing. And yet I was entirely hooked in, entirely absorbed when I imagined the scenes in my head. I saw them clearly and fully. No email. Yeah. So I watched all 3 of them right in a row. And it was really, really an absorbing experience. I thought I might space them out. But I really enjoyed it. And then, you and I both decided that we wanted to review these first 3 episodes, discuss these first 3 episodes without kind of the baggage of the knowledge of exactly what's happening in the 4th episode. So a lot of people who got screeners watched that 4th episode. Some of our listeners probably got screeners and watched that 4th episode. We did not, but I had fun texting Ken all weekend going, did you break? Because if you broke, I'm going to watch it too. But you did not break, Ken. You did not break.
I held the line. King Theoden gave me a speech and I held the line. It was very close. Sunday was the biggest day because they were going to expire Monday morning. I was like, if I can get through Sunday. Fortunately, I was a little busy as I am most Sundays, but I did have some time. And I said to myself, and I think you had sent me a text, and I was like, I'm going to rewatch episode 3. And there you go. I did it and avoided episode 4. We're heroes, really. We're heroes. We're just trying to be of the people, not watching episodes ahead of time. But I think it was important, especially our discussion today, especially rewatching these episodes last night and this morning, putting notes down. I'm glad that I have only speculation and not knowledge of what's going forward. And if anyone out there reviewed a show and has the knowledge, that's totally fine too. Just for me personally, I was like, there's a lot of questions I have, and I'm excited to wait to get the answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And then final thing for me is I still just love that midnight tradition, lucky to be in a time zone where it's only midnight. Seeing different people's tweets, Phil Sostak in particular, who always has a all wings report in tweet, like setting up, having a little whiskey, setting up an action figure. So I did that, and I watched the first 2 episodes on Disney Plus last night with no emails, and then got up and watched episode 3 this morning as well. So got to see them all again. Let's get into our big picture reaction, our overall thoughts. I have a lot of overall thoughts. I'm just going to be honest, because there are a lot of details.
Our episode.
Well, sometimes the overall reaction is just sort of like, here's I liked it, I didn't. Here's the little part I struggled with, right? But there's, I think it's because we've got 3 episodes at once, and because it's not just these 3 episodes we're talking about, right? It's the introduction of this new show, this new or maybe not new tone, depending on who you ask. So I think some of the overall reaction is about the existence of the show itself, as well as these first 3 episodes.
Yeah, you're very right. I find a lot of times when we have this discussion, the overall reactions, which are important to our discussions, but a lot of times for me, it's like, yeah, I loved it. It's Star Wars. Let's roll up our sleeves and figure out why. And I did stop along with you. It was like, there's a lot around this show already, and even having to process my own reactions to it.
Yeah. So let's get into that. Did you love it, like it? Was there any element that you struggled with? Take me into your thoughts in your world, Ken.
This was a text. I may have texted to Alex Damon, I think. And I said, he's like, kind of like, what do you think? And I went, I am absolutely in love with this show. I'm not sure I like it. And therefore I'm kind of struggling with it. But after rolling up my sleeves and doing the struggle this morning and seeing these episodes a few times, not only am I on board for it, I think it's going to be a really important conversation starter for a lot of big things that are Star Wars. And the don't like it had to do with the, I don't know if I'm going to sit down on a Saturday and be like, you know what, I want to watch the first 2 somber episodes of Andor. But that doesn't mean they don't belong.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of Star Wars discussion of, Star Wars contains many things, and what do people come to it for? And I have a lot of friends, and I know you do as well, who like all of Star Wars, but when they revisit Star Wars, they want to watch the triumphant chapters, right? They want to watch Return of the Jedi. They recognize Empire Strikes Back is great, or The Last Jedi is great, but they want to watch Return of the Jedi, or Rise of Skywalker, or Solo, because they want to go on a fun romp as well. And I think that it makes sense to start Andor and say, there are absolutely moments of comedy and whimsy, but it starts with the, like, do you want to look into the dark soul of Star Wars,
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been waiting for this show for so long, as have a lot of folks. You have as well. But in my circles, there was, especially on that day, that trailer dropped, Celebration, I had some people being like, I know you've been, you know what? I think you might be right. This was good. I'm sorry I said some of I'm not looking forward to the show type of things. And I know you and I probably represent a lot of folks in Star Wars small circles of fandom like that. So the show I've been waiting for, and celebrating so many things about it. And there were so many things I expected the show to do. And it is both not any of that, but everything I hoped for. And that's just it's a fun feeling when you pull back. It's a fun feeling, and I like that. And I think I needed time. And we always say it's okay. Don't tweet out your thoughts right away. Take a sip of coffee and wait and figure out what this really means to you.
Have some calf, like they actually did in this show.
Yes,
love it. I think that there was this tension for me of already some of the conversations started that I have that weird experience where you like agree with the first sentence and then the second sentence you're like, oh no, what have I agreed to, right? Where I saw some takes from journalists, even headlines, people who seen screeners of I love Andor, it's tense, it's great, it's a spy thriller, and I'm like, yes. And then the next sentence is, finally some good Star Wars, or finally what Star Wars should be, or way better than X, right?
Yes.
So I kind of knew sitting down, like, I have to separate the show from the way that some people are, choosing to talk about it. Everybody gets to choose how they talk about it. So what I really wanted to focus on is I wanted to acknowledge that. I wanted to get put past that myself, because I love the show. I love that it's different. I want different Star Wars to have different flavors. I'm not personally excited about or on board with the negative comparison game. I wouldn't mind at all if somebody said, hey, I like it when Star Wars is a romp, so Andor's a little heavy for me. Or I wouldn't mind if somebody comes to me and is like, I don't enjoy things unless they're really gritty and the characters are going through hell. So, some of the other Star Wars isn't for me, but Andor, that's my bag. I don't mind when people make it personal at all, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes those statements kind of come out of like, this one is for adults and the others have just been silly children fun. All that kind of negative comparison game is not for me. So I had to kind of set that aside, not engage with the discourse, but engage with the show Andor, which I loved.
Yeah. No, you're speaking some truth. Preach on, my brother. Because look, there's it's not just the way we discuss things on 4% here. It's just I don't do tweet threads, man. I don't. I wish I did, because I was going to do a tweet thread of here's all the adult things in Star Wars. A lot of them from animated shows. That adult word is something really special, right? Like, what do you think it means? The word bastards and some skin? Is that what you think? Or is it the situations? Is it Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order when those who were supposed to protect her and lead her turn their back on her and then say, "Oh, I'm sorry"? Is it Sabine on the ground crying about her place and a weapon and what it represents in leadership? Like, that's to me just as much adult as anything else. Infant Nest pulling off her helmet. Should be a child, yet she's a warrior having to fight, pick up for her dead mother destroyed by the system. That's adult. And that stuff's all through Star Wars. So I think I was immediately having that reaction to, because I get what they mean. I get, because this is more mature Star Wars. It's like TV 14. Like, I totally get it. That is not wrong. But then there's this immediate follow-up of finally my Star Wars that carries with it an attitude, not even gatekeeping. I just think it does not allow for the other perspectives. And Star Wars is about generational change as much as myriad other things. But I saw a couple big folks, people I enjoy, Netflix documentary filmmakers and stuff, who were just like, "Oh, I feel disconnected from Star Wars." That's fair. Finally, we got some Star Wars that I think this is done the right way, and it's like that's not fair. and it's been a battle. But like you, I push back to the center of this, and there's so many Star Wars things in this show that, despite the fact that at a party I might want to turn to Tony Gilroy and say, "Could you shut up?" Despite that feeling I have inside my soul right now, I'm absolutely affected by this show. It stayed with me. Driving to the comedy show, it stayed with me.
Yeah, no, it's been delivering on a lot of the things that it was discussed as, what the trailers made it look like, what a lot of us in the sort of the Star Wars talking world have been hoping for. It really delivered on all those things. But I really agree with you. The adult thing is one of the overall things I wanted to address, because yes, I do enjoy that it's, quote unquote adult. And yeah, there's no denying that. It starts with a brothel accidental murder. It has the naughty S word, pillow talk secrets are the thing that motivate the plot itself, It, but it is all about tone, right? It's weird to me to say finally an adult show when the last Star Wars show we had, Obi-Wan, started with, childhood trauma that was so upsetting they needed to add a warning, right? The Mandalorian starts with an emotionally disconnected guy, Mandalorian Din Djarin, cutting someone in half with a door. You gave all these great examples of sort of the thematic what is adult, and I always say this about A New Hope. It came out as Star Wars in 1977, and people praised it as this light, fun, whip fast, good versus evil, fun thrill fest. And like, yes, that is what's happening, because that's the tone that is communicated. But within that, right, Luke's family is burned to a visceral, horrific crisp. Leia is tortured and her entire planet is destroyed in a mass genocide. Those events are the bedrock of Star Wars. What's different about Andor and enjoyable to me about Andor is using the medium of streaming television to slow down and really look at those moments, really look at how they affect the people, right? Like, Andor is just kind of like, well, what if we stayed with Leia as she truly processed Alderaan for 12 episodes, right? So the thing for me is I'm fascinated because I agree it is more adult. But if you're interested in that, it is absolutely Star Wars. It has always been Star Wars. It's about the way that sort of bedrock trauma, tragedy, real world stuff is handled in the various stories.
Yeah, somber and sobering is the way I described it, because it's as if we saw the occupation of Naboo and didn't hear about it off screen or read about it later in E.K. Johnson's books, right? There's that line of like, it ain't going well on Naboo. We just don't see it. They choose not to show it. Leia is tortured by Vader. The door closes. We don't see it. They choose not to show it. And this is going in that area. So that's why no one's wrong in describing it as more mature or adult. It's so right. It's on the screen. It's very clear. And I think that's needed. I can get into reasons why I'm actually intrigued by that and loving it, and absolutely loving it. And it just connects very nicely tonally, visually to Rogue One, which so many people love for the same reasons. But yeah, it's just, I don't mean to sound grumpy, but I think a lot of people hide behind that finally adult Star Wars. They're putting a flagpole in the mountain of, I missed a lot of other things prior to this. And it's just, my dark take on it.
No, I understand that. I think for me it is, I know I bang on about the term tip of the iceberg. I think it's one of the great things about Star Wars is like, even in Andor, there's tip of the iceberg stuff where you like, Pre-Mor is a corporation. You don't understand exactly how many, we know they have a sector, how many planets they control. What exactly kind of company is it? What is the exact nature of their relationship with the Empire? It's sort of implied, but there's, lots of things to kind of figure out. And I feel like, to me, the promise of the Disney Plus shows is examining things that in the big Star Wars saga have been tip of the iceberg and getting to dive in. So I think for me, when people are like, oh, this is all new, I'm like, to me, it's more of what we saw, right? What's thrilling about Andor and feels different is really seeing people in their day-to-day lives. They're still caught up in big life-changing events, but we get such a sense of the day-to-day. But that's tip of the iceberg promise fulfilled, right? Those kind of lives are hinted at by Owen and Beru in the first movie. When she's just making dinner in her weird space Cuisinart, right? Breakfast, right? The Ugnaughts walking to work with their little toolkit briefcases, right? The club goers at the Outlander Club in Attack the Clones who are like, letting off some steam on what I assume is a Friday night. Rey's entire opening scene on Jakku. Rose Tico's backstory, that she was just a person and she made this different choice. This idea that Star Wars is about day-to-day lives, and then what happens when something massive comes into your life. That idea of day-to-day life is there. And I think one of the reasons that I want to get excited that if people like Andor, to say, well, maybe look at some of those moments in the films and think about them a little bit more. Or in particular, if you like Andor and you have not read a Star Wars novel, Andor is feeling to me like a Star Wars novel on screen, in particular.
That's an excellent point.
In particular, a lot of the ones that are set in the era of Imperial Terror, Rebel Rising by Beth Revis, Alphabet Squadron, the last dregs of Imperial Terror, Lost Stars, Lords of the Sith are some that come to mind that have big, exciting Star Wars action adventure thrills. But because there are books, not movies, you spend a bunch of time with people doing day-to-day things, drinking calf, listening to their favorite music, disappointing their friends and family, dating, having sex. There's sex in a ton of Star Wars books, in a whole gamut of sex, from healthy to not healthy. So I think for me, it's like, I am thrilled to see all this on screen in Andor. But from my perspective, my Star Wars journey, it isn't entirely new. And I feel like if people like it, here's my positive take. If people like it, I'd say spend more time with those moments that are day-to-day life in the big movies, and search out these novels. Because if you like that, there's a ton of Star Wars storytelling that is exciting, but it is dealing with people's day-to-day lives as well.
Yeah, glad you brought up the book thing. This is similar, quite frankly, in tone to Alphabet Squadron. A lot of things going on there. Sex in the Aftermath series is there as well. You mentioned, funny, Rebel Rising is a young adult novel, where a quaint partisan attacks a festival to kill an Imperial target and takes out children in the process. So I felt this was actually familiar territory in a lot of ways. But those are books, and I understand not everyone's going to read them or have time to read them, all that kind of stuff. But So it's part of that, and it's very clearly I looked at it this way. This especially the first two episodes. But it's definitely a third too. It's Cassian looking out at the twin suns, wondering what is out there for him and who he is, trying to learn a lot about that. We'll get into those themes. But instead of, it's as if Luke had just left a brothel, killed a Tusken, and fist fought a Jawa. It's just same end result. It's just different path.
Yep. Resisting the call, maybe still resisting the call. We'll see. Yeah. I mean, I think we talked a lot about kind of some of the conversation around it and how we're processing what does adult mean in Star Wars? What does adult mean in Andor? I think for myself, just kind of real big picture, what I did love about these first three episodes and what I think it delivered on is that these core ideas that we're going to talk about are classic Star Wars stuff, right? Family of blood and found family, rebellion, the idea that community and creativity and empathy is ultimately stronger than rigid authoritarianism, right? These are some classic Star Wars themes that are the absolute animating life force of what's going on in Andor. So you got some kind of classic, you got some timeless, but then, you know, this day-to-day life, this tone, this specificity, the spy thriller gives it a different flavor. So for me, it's classic Star Wars. It's some old and timeless and some fresh and new. And the spy thriller payoff is, for me, is exactly what I wanted.
Yes.
For a gritty, grounded adult Star Wars show, there's not much like action in the 3 episodes. It's almost all tension, right? A ton of the plot literally just hinges on the word Canary. Who has said it to who, when, and how? This was exactly what I was excited for spy thrillers vibe, and I think that's going to be very fun going forward. In between episodes, is we have cliffhangers, we wonder who to trust, and you know the fans get to discuss all week. Do we trust this person? What did they actually mean? Who actually slipped and said that word to the wrong person? That's so new to Star Wars, and I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there, and there's a lot of takes out there that everything else in Star Wars just reminds you about what Star Wars is about, and those are those are not well thought out takes. But not analyzing what's going on in the past shows, but also not really engaging with what's going on in this show too. It's definitely there, and nothing is so far as badass. It's all telling the Empire trampled over everyone on the backs of the systems in place. It didn't sweep over the land; it tore it down piece by piece, and it's dealing with those big things. We just could see it with a different lens.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, last big picture thing, because it's something that we discussed going into Andor, and many other people did as well, about Andor being, because of what it's dealing with, being a little bit more explicitly political. I think a lot of Star Wars is explicitly political, and if it isn't explicit enough, you can Google George Lucas interviews where he will be just crushingly explicit about some of that. But I did really think that this was so much about class, about what does freedom really mean, about poverty, right? And I think it's so successfully mirroring long-standing problems in many societies, but some that we are actively dealing with right now in America. That even if you're the kind of person who approaches Star Wars more as fantasy and as a break from the real world, even if you don't really want to engage with the real world analogies, I think they're so strong and so powerful in the show that you feel them in your bones, right? Even if you don't stop to go, that I feel like that's kind of a one-on-one comparison to X. For me, it's hard to imagine that you could just watch this and say it has nothing to do with our world.
You'd have to make some big leaps. Big leaps. Good on you if you can do it and try. Yeah.
Do you agree with that? What are your thoughts on the strong connection to reality?
Here's when I say nothing so far is badass, there's to try to explain it in the best way possible. This is presenting the very again, adult action that's capable. The Star Wars stories are capable of, but it is. You cannot deny where it's coming from. You cannot deny its perspective. And I think a lot of the folks that might watch the Darth Vader hallway scene and only think that it's a badass moment for a cool character, because there's a lot of badass, cool moments in it. I've talked about it. I've written about it, and I celebrate them. But to stop there, this is the show for all of you to maybe push past more things and deal with what the art is actually communicating. Star Wars is always trying to communicate something, and you can always extrapolate things and attach it to your own life, spiritually, professionally, your journey. And you can also look around the world and see what it's reflecting, and especially of its times. Prequel era definitely have a certain time to it as well, and but it's also timeless. This show is going. Do you like that's why dark and gritty does count for the show, but I tweeted out something the other day of like I'm removing that from my list because man, so many people just stop there. What is the dark and gritty telling you? This show is not being subtle about it. Yeah. So I hope some people process it.
Yeah. Yeah, I very much agree, and I'm sure we'll get into some of those details as we get into the big themes and ideas at stake in these first 3 episodes. Actually, I do want to ask you one other question. It does seem to me like those first 3 episodes obviously are one big arc. Are you ultimately happy that we got all 3 episodes at once, or is there a part of you that feels like you would have liked them doled out one at a time.
No, I think it worked out for all three of them. It reminds me of Clone War style arcs. It definitely works. I don't say this kind of stuff often, but episode 1 and 2 could have been one episode for me. I don't normally. I think that's sometimes hollow criticism. They work independently. They're definitely the opening tracks to a more complete album. But if they had decided to do that and they still kept the 12th episode, that's something else. I'll see. But I think once all 12 episodes are done, I bet I don't feel that as much as I do now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I was very happy in the end that they released all 3 episodes because it is an arc. The Clone Wars comparison is absolutely great. And I felt the same way about the first 2 episodes. It's a minor criticism, but I did feel like they were both connected by thematic ideas, and the end beats of both of them were like sort of thematically on point and thematically satisfying resolution / cliffhanger to lead you into the next episode. But for the amount of forward movement in the plot, I think I might have felt a little frustrated or a little stymied if we'd only got the first episode, then a week, the second episode, because everything that's building in the 3rd episode from a sort of plot perspective, you feel like you know what's happening, right? Cassian's trying to get away. Cassian's trying to sell this thing. He's trying to have this meeting with Luthen. So thematically, they're rich in individual episodes, but forward movement of plot, I feel I might have been a little frustrated. Yeah.
And I felt funny. You know what's funny? I felt that more this morning, watching them all again. Second episode ended, and I was like, I might have just enjoyed those being one. But again, I'm not going to have that problem going forward, I don't think.
Nope, because they're always going to be available to us, and we're always going to be able to smash that next button. Or actually, just sit and wait, and the button will be smashed for us.
I sit and wait because sometimes with these streaming apps, you hit the wrong button, you suddenly find yourself at the Roku homepage or something.
You never know. Suddenly you're going to be watching watch this next, which actually has no relationship to what you're watching. Disney Plus is pretty good about that. Anyway. All right. I did want to be sure to talk about that. Now let's get into the big themes, the ideas at stake in this opening arc of Andor. I'm sure going to have a lot to talk about here, but where did you go first, Ken?
Lies versus truth. And man, that goes a lot of different spots. And it's all, it starts from the very beginning. Lies are just being told all around and stories but the central part is B2 Emo saying, I can lie. I have adequate power reserves. The act of lying drains him. And if that ain't a statement about what this episode is, especially particularly the first one, and I will confess something, Joseph, most of my notes seem to be from the first one, and I just carried them out into the other 2 episodes. And by the third rewatch of the 3rd episode, I just was watching. So I apologize. But if you let me kind of run through it, the brothel hostess can't give the truth to Cassian. The sentry guard, both guards want to lie about what happened. More on that in a second. Cassian needs B2 Emu to lie. Cassian needs Brazos to lie. They set the lie with Brazos. Chief Hine, who I will forever know as Bronze Jan Royce from Game of Thrones, wants to lie about the whole incident. Again, put a pin in that one. Sarah Karn is reacting to those lies. Trying, sir. Cassian has to hope Bix has kept his secret. And Bix has had to, lies to Tim and some friends to just get out the message. But all this, and at the end, it all leads to Cassian being given a chance to live what I call an honest life by Luthen Rail. But this is what I don't mean like he's lying. It is about a journey. It is about he's not just a criminal turned good. He has to be honest about what has happened to him as he discovers that. He has to be honest about what is happening around him. And a lot of these people here are not allowed to live life honestly. They cannot live like that. Their truths are dangerous. Their truths put them on target sheets. Their truths just can't be shared. And that's a lot about what's going on here. And the system is not being honest. We can talk more about it later, but just the simple thing about the sentry guards first trying to the one trying to lie. No, we just got to fight. And then Chief Hine trying to do the same thing. And there's some great comedy in that you and I can talk to, but it is the system lying to protect itself, so that it doesn't clean up its own house. And this all stays as it is. And the system keeps repeating and the struggle keeps repeating and the lies keep repeating. This is a show about how do you make things honest. And even Brazos saying, make yourself useful. It's not just about Cassian going, well, I've been dating around, I've been stealing some things, time to shape up. He's had to carry some lies about himself, and now he needs to go find stuff out about himself. He's searching for that. That's I think the pickup of his sister. We're going to talk about family, community, and all those things. And it all leads these 3 episodes to Luth and Rael just kind of being like, do you want to be honest? Yeah. Look around you. You want to do something with meaning? Quit lying about it all. You got to do something about it. You got to be truthful. You got to be honest.
No, I so agree. I think that's one of the things out of the gate that is really, really powerful. I think a lot of the big ideas in Andor are asking, why is life under the Empire so horrible on a real personal level and on a systemic level, right? And on this, it's on both a personal level and a systemic level that, yes, people are forced into lives where they cannot be honest with each other. They cannot be honest with themselves, right? I thought about it a lot as surface truth and real truth, because there are a lot of exchanges where everybody knows what the real truth is.
Yes.
And the circumstances make it so we have to carry what we know is true, and then we have to say all these lies, right? This elaborate, fabricated untruths, right? And I think that gets to this really human place that we've all experienced. And I think, honestly, in our society, it's some of the stuff that we're trying to kind of wrestle with, right? Where people in power in various ways have abused that power, right? Yes. And everybody at a company knows it, or everybody in a friend group kind of knows the truth, wink, wink, nod, nod, but it would break our systems of our jobs, of our social groups, to say the truth out loud, and sometimes to even fully let the truth sink into ourselves. So I think that's why it's riveting. I think that's why it's powerful, is because it isn't just lies. It's trying to kind of hold and deal with this real truth that is bubbling in your gut, while constantly, blatantly layering a second fake truth on top of it, you know?
Oof, you're taking it to spots, man. You got to sit down on the old YouTube pundit desk with someone who is built on lies, and you have to. The truth keeps things going. And I'm, we're going to get to Cyril Karn. Kyle Solar's doing next level work. We're going to talk about it, but his reaction to the lies, or the surface truths, as you're saying too, in the situation is gripping just as much as it is gripping to watch Cassian go through what he's going through, or the citizens of Ferrix. It's system breaking. It's all of it is.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you laid out some great examples of this. And I really agree that to me, it matters that it starts with Cassian's search for truth, right? And he can't get to his sister. He can't get to this connection without the danger of revealing a little bit of truth, right? The entire plot hinges on Cassian's truth that he is from Kenari. It hinges on the fact that Cassian, who dates lots of ladies, can't stop himself from pillow talking his truth. That's so heartbreak. It's played for drama and for a little bit for comedy, but it's so heartbreaking, right? Of all he wants is this intimacy where he can share his real truth. It's also played for comedy and for drama, but you mentioned it, Cassian and his friend Brazo, yes-anding an elaborate alibi for Cassian, right? In a different show, that scene might be Cassian going hey, can you tell people I was with you last night? And the other person going, all right, right? But that Cassian walks up to him and gives him the first half of the scene, and it's an improv scene, Brasso takes it and goes, yes, and this, and that they both have an understanding that elaborate of a fake truth is needed. That's what really hit me, that elaborate of a fake truth, a surface truth, is required.
Yeah. And the energy it's taking, not just for B2 emo. Oh, B. I love B already. But, it's just a great topic sentence of the energy this is taking from everyone, how it will power you down and destroy you from many different angles.
Yeah, I love Cassian's actual quote. I know it takes energy, but can you make a lie?
that is 2 lies. Yes.
That's gonna make it into my daily repertoire. Can you make a lie? And then I think this is about surface truth and real truth, but it is also getting into all of these big picture ideas about class and wealth and value and hypocrisy, right? I could watch that scene with the Primor Security Chief Hein, who I know as a Slovene from Doctor Who.
I love that.
And Cyril Karn. That scene is hilarious, beautiful, maddening, everything at the same time. But I just really wanted to share his exact line. Right, Chief Hein says, obviously he's saying like, well, I kind of know the real truth that these guys were jerks, and they probably did actually harass the wrong person, and they probably kind of got themselves killed when they didn't need to, which I feel like we as the audience, that's the way it's presented to us, right?
Yeah.
So he's dealing with the real truth, and then he's saying that truth is unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's going to cause a problem for me because the goal of reporting the Empire is brevity, and then laying out this just blatant. He is aware, is a part of his job, is a part of his power structure, that there is a truth, and then they maintain a fake truth, and everybody knows the fake truth is fake, but there's a game where it must be maintained. When he says they were at the brothel, which we're not supposed to have, the expensive one, which they shouldn't be able to afford, drinking Revnog, which we're not supposed to allow. It's more than just, we got to cover this up, right? In that one line, there's just like a breathtaking amount of story being told about wealth, about privilege, about what you get to have if you sell your soul to the Empire and their system, right? So it is about surface truth and real truth, but there's so much more buried in it. I think when actors have been talking about Tony Gilroy's writing in these episodes, I think it's these kind of lines they're talking about that build an entire world, an entire character in a few lines.
Yeah, and sliding down a little bit to the lies of the system things, I love what you're saying, because that speech is so wonderful. And again, it's also, there's a little bit of office space humor in there, some TPS reports being filled out, but just what it means. And even the Chief Hein fudging the crime numbers, in effect, hides the true state of the galaxy. The Empire can broadcast the lies and it's A-OK. That's part of the bigger picture too. But the lies and cover-ups obviously just push, the systematic problems forward. There's no change. It keeps going. And this is why I think the two intro scenes we got starting this series off, you got the Blade Runner-esque scene with Cassian. I've seen that online before. His murder is, the first kill is not intentional. And the second one, I think it's him snapping at those lies or surface truths. Because hearing that from the older Sentry Guard, and we'll just lie, we'll just cover it up, we'll move on, things will be great. Well, I'll be alive, you'll be alive. He snaps, he kills in that moment. But then you got that scene with B2 Emo following that, which is whimsical and it's endearing. And he is introduced just rolling through the city. Those hounds arrive, and he doesn't seek out a fight. Cassian doesn't seek out a fight. B2 Emo actually tries to protect himself, protect in place. Just let me go on with my life. We all understand that this is how this works. Just let me go on. But the one comes back and pees on him. So B2 Emo fights back. He snaps. He snaps at it. And it's a comedy, but it's a through line. Cassian's not, he doesn't return a conquering hero. You killed two. Great. It's not treated like that. It's treated of, what did you do? Because what you did will upset our system. There's now a truth to that now will bring more pain to us. And it's all interwoven so wonderfully.
Yeah, and talk about a lack of freedom, right? Of like, just, we need to stay inside these lines at all time, or worse things will come for us, I love you connecting Cassian and B2 Emo's need to protect themselves and somebody coming along and making a problem where there doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
From shaking people down to urinating on them, both problems you shouldn't have to have. I think one of the other things that I'm fascinated by in that scene that you're bringing up of, that headbutt is this kind of realistic accidental death, right?
Yeah.
But Cassian's choice to shoot the other guy, to me, that is about that guy suddenly realizes, okay, we got to create a fake truth that will allow me to keep going on the way I am.
Yeah.
And I think Cassian's shooting him because he knows he doesn't have the privilege that guy does. That guy can lie with impunity. We hear from Chief Hine that he used to be a big head honcho of 4, which I would imagine is since they're on Planet 1, that's Planet 4. Like, he used to be the head of security of a planet.
Yeah.
And he's such an a-hole. He got bounced down to here, but he's still untouchable. He could walk in with that lie and he would be fine. And Cassian knows he doesn't have that privilege.
Does not. No. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's extremely tough.
Keep getting peed on.
Keep getting peed on. There's a lot more layers of truth. I'm sure we'll discover them. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with Sergeant Mosk, Linus Mosk, who is the guy who is in on the raid with Karn. I think there's some half-truths there that Mosk does believe in order, but he wants to. But he's manipulating Karn at the same time. There's a real sort of what is he saying that's true for himself and what is manipulation to get what he wants out of the deal. I think Karn is lying to himself about who he is, which comes crashing down when he gives that great, horrible speech to the security forces. So a lot of ongoing layers of truth. If it's okay with you, I want to jump to what I think was one of the other really big themes, and I'm sure you have a ton of thoughts on this as well. Are you okay jumping?
Please, let's jump.
Yeah, so definitely the truth was huge to me, but I think like maybe the biggest thing for me was this sort of thematic idea that I put under the umbrella of relationships motivate all, right? When people talk about gritty and grounded in day-to-day life, I think why that's resonating is a lot of times Star Wars is about characters who are sort of trapped in a war, trapped in a battle, trapped in ideology, right? And then they're making their choices kind of within that. I feel like what's happening in Andor is this is a story about characters who have specific relationships, connections, community, and then fear about those relationships. And what is happening in their relationships is what is driving them to an ideology, right? Like if you look at Star Wars, the first film, right? There isn't a ton of room, so the Empire's coded is very, very bad. They torture people and blow up a planet and murder Owen and Beru. There's plenty of evidence in the film that they are bad, but right, we join Luke is this kid going like, oh, I hate the Empire, and you don't really know why he has that ideology, right? You know, Leia's a brave senator rebel, but you don't know exactly why. Just watching that first film, we know a lot now, but this is taking that step back and going like, well, if some of these people are authoritarians, why? Yeah. If some of these people need rebellion, why? If some of these people accidentally make choices that benefit the authoritarians, why? And the answer, again and again in these first 3 episodes, is relationships. So I think that's why this is coming across as really compelling, and why the day-to-day is compelling, because it's about how do the actual things that affect us lead to our ideology, right? If in real life, if you're a person who's like, I'm not that invested in politics, like, well, maybe it's because some relationship or experience you've had hasn't led you to being very passionate about ideology, whereas a lot of other people have had relationships, community experiences that have led them to be passionate about their ideology. And I think that's what we're seeing in these first 3 episodes is how do these people become passionate about their ideology? So it's not just a concept, it is a reality of their lives.
Yeah, there's so much there, and I want to jump to a lot of Cyril. I just want to dive in and figure out what's going on there. There's some too. When you talk about like maybe you haven't got to the point where you see how it affects the community or around, and I think that's real powerful. And there's some stuff going on with this character Tim, who, by the way, was in the attack on Starkiller Base in Force Awakens. That actor James McArdle was an X-wing pilot. Fun. I actually love with him. He's dating Bix, but he does not understand her, and he doesn't understand Cassian's plight, and that's what drives him in his ideology in this arc. And he pays the price for it. But it's kind of interesting to hear you say that you haven't reached that point. He reached that point too late.
Yep. Yeah, because we'll get back to Cassian, because I think I'm fascinated by Cassian's emotional journey. But yeah, it's fun to see a sense of dating, a sense of sexuality, getting up in the morning, because the community alarm clock of the Time Grappler, who I love with all my heart, that's all.
Oh, God, it's the best.
The calf. It's all day-to-day stuff. Why is it compelling? Because it's the day-to-day that motivates the action, the horror, the meaning, right? We learn that Tim Carlo, with 2 M's, so it's a space Tim, that it's not coming out of I am pro empire. It's not coming out of greed. It is I am afraid. Every time Cassian comes around, Bix gets upset. And I'm afraid for her, which he says to Cassian, right? And then when he follows him to the bar and Cassian kind of reaches for her arm and she pulls away, you can see from Tim's perspective of like, there's this fear for his partner, but then also just the really real thing going on too. He's also a jealous little asshole, in my opinion. But it's all about, all of his choices are his relationship to Bix and his fears about his relationship with Bix.
Yeah, and not fully understand the situation, and to put it in just a straight real world perspective, it's sometimes, I don't know, sometimes it can be dangerous to do that, I guess. But this is what the show's doing. This is a white man dating a brown woman, and it's easy for him to hide behind that. He doesn't understand her worldview. He doesn't understand the view of the world of her. So he makes this decision out of this jealousy. I'm gonna get this guy the picture. He upsets her a lot. He's an ex-boyfriend. I'm taking charge here. I'm doing this, and it gets her head busted open. Gets him killed. He has no comprehension of, well, wait a minute, not her. He just doesn't understand it. He isn't connected to that there yet, and it was really important because he's a jealous little prick.
Yeah, I mean,
TV 14-4 center.
It really is. We'll talk about the S word. But yeah, no, I so agree with that, and I think that's really great and really powerful to point out. And the layers of truth with them, where she seems to legitimately care for him, right, and legitimately want to be in a nurturing, positive relationship with him. So she sees something there, And Cassian, the picture of Cassian is that he's got a lot going on, and he is pushing all of his friendships and all of his relationships to the breaking point, right? So she's clearly in for Tim, but not in enough to let him in on her real life. And is that because of fear for him? So all sorts of complexity there as well. So I want to get into Cassian, right? Because he is the main character. I'm really fascinated that every crucial moment for Cassian is motivated by a relationship, right? When Tony Gilroy in particular was giving interviews and saying, this is a story about how he becomes a revolutionary, right? I had this little moment of concern. It's like, well, I don't want to start out with him being apathetic, right? And the thing is, like, he has ideology. He knows what the Empire is. He's got a backstory with them that we're maybe going to learn more about. He doesn't like them, but he is the farthest thing from apathetic because he is motivated by a relationship. Every beat that happens, right? On Canary, as a kid, he is in rage and pain after the death of that leader figure, who I believe in the credits they're listed as alphas with numbers. So if I got that wrong, my apologies. But for now, I'll say Alpha 1's death. He sneaks on board that ship out of rage and pain for Alpha's death, and that's what gets him whisked off the planet and separated from his sister. The current timeline plot is kicked off by looking for that sister, which in the credits I believe is called Carrie. So that is, the whole thing is relationship, right? I'm sticking my neck out. I'm testing all of my other relationships in my current life because I need to have resolution on the possibility that I abandoned this sister, right? The actual mechanics of the plot over the first 3 episodes is everything hinges on the fact that he can't stop telling ladies he's from Fest during pillow talk, which is so heartbreaking. Even down to he's tracked to the warehouse because he's calling B2 Emo to tell Marva he's sorry and make sure she doesn't get too cold. Which, by the way, if you rewatch, that's one of the rewards of rewatching it. That Brasso brings it up early on of like, tell Marva to keep the heat up. This great heat moment, and then at the end in that montage, she breathes out and you can see her breath, and it's not a heavy hand, but that's about money too, right? She doesn't think she has enough money to keep the heat on, you know? But anyway, it's just the idea of this is what's powerful about this storytelling, because it is ideology. It is leading to action based on ideology, but it's starting with the personal. I'm going to be caught by an authoritarian force because I wanted to apologize to my mom and make sure that she knows she has enough money to be physically comfortable. How could you get more real than that, right? And that's what leads you to say, enough, I have to fight. Yeah, no, your idea of I wouldn't call it fear, right? But it just kind of seemed maybe that was where we're going. Apathetic, doesn't want to join, but we had that thing lingering over the thoughts of Cassian of, he's been in this fight since he was 6, which, by the way, I still think spiritually he's tracking pretty well. We'll get some more information from him and his story. But yeah, no, I think you're right. That's what it's. I don't even want to say twist on it. It's just the way they're choosing to look at the issue, and how the community and the search for who you are is one of the big themes I love in this. That the literal search and just kind of the spiritual search of who you are, who you want to be, is big. And so, yeah, he isn't apathetic. He's in this situation, in this horrible world. Yeah. And Luthen wants him to take this next step, right? And do something big, do something truthful. But even within that, Luthen is using emotion, right? To push him, right? He talks about his father being hanged in Rick's Road on that planet in the Central Courtyard. I assume that is his adoptive father, Clem, that we meet in the flashback. But it's just kind of pushing this idea that at any point all along the way, Cassian is an empathetic character who deeply needs and wants people in his life, wants to open up to them. And at every turn, it is a huge risk to allow any sort of intimacy or truth. And that is what is leading him to where he's going to end up. Yeah, and been the MO of his life. He's kind of an F up, and it's just everyone has that reaction to him. What have you done now? What lied have you now? The quote of what Marva said when B2E2 repeats is just, it's hilarious. There's so many things that do work in different ways in this episode, drama and comedy, but it's powerful stuff about where he is. Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's talk about Karn a little bit, right? Because I think what is motivating him is a big question. If you just watch these 3 episodes, if you've listened to interviews, we've kind of got a little bit of a spoiler from the interviews that there's some relationship stuff motivating him that we're going to learn more about. If people haven't, read that or don't want to, we can leave it there. That was definitely something that affected me, because watching these first 3 episodes, there's great questions about what is motivating him. And we know some of the answers to come. But talking about the episode, what kind of thoughts do you go through about it? Is it relationship that's motivating him? Is it ideology? Is it something else? What did you feel was motivating this great tension and this great need from super uptight, super clean cut Cyril Karn? He's so good. Everyone on the show is A+. He's just hitting something special. He's doing things. There's this power and control bucket we're going to talk about, and I think he's dead center in that, right? And ideas sold as safety, ideas sold as duty. You got the sergeant coming in there to inflame him. That's what I've been saying, sir. Pockets of fermenting. I love all that. And a lot of it started. I think there's so much fear. And there's fear of the unknown, fear of the others. He's been raised probably to think this. Look at the starting story of Ray Sloan, this imperial character a lot of us love. It starts from she lived in a probably similar world to Ferrex. I can't remember the name right now. And the Empire brought order and safety. And she saw that. She saw the benefits of that. What's happened in Karn's life that has led him to this point? But he is between all the lines, right? He doesn't just color in the lines. He eats in the lines. He walks in the lines, and he adds lines. He adds lines to his uniform. He needs more lines, more piping, and some tailoring, sir. Safety, because there's safety in that control for him, right? And there's this fear of that. We'll find out more about it. But I think the things he wants to accomplish might seem noble. To clear some of it, to be clear, some of it is,
it's not celebrated. Again, Cassian is not celebrated for what he's done. Bix, what have you done? All those kind of things. But so if you could look at Karn. I bet there's a lot of people watching this show who think Karn's the hero, right? And he's got that perspective, but it all has distance. And you talk about relationships and relationships driving you and changing you and maybe affecting you. He doesn't. We're going to talk about probably community and family as well here. So many things to get to, Joseph, but he's not even connected to his own, what it would be considered his professional family. That speech, other than being hilariously awkward in a British Office UK way, was also spoke of. Yeah, he's David Brent Danson, but he's not connected to these people that he's supposed to be connected with, that he's the only sense of family he has. And the strong beliefs he has are not based on experience. He's high ranking. He's an officer, but this comes off as his first time in the field, at least in this capacity. You have the deck officer saying, or the tech officer saying, have you ever been there? They have their own way of doing things. He's our eye into that. We're going to talk a little bit more about the destruction of cultures and all those kind of things going. Yes, we are. All the things we're going to go on, but that it's really powerful to hear. The clank, clank, clank is very real world. It's very real world stuff. I've seen it in display. I've had friends experience that, and that's a different podcast, perhaps. But it's all stunningly, shockingly, frighteningly, hauntingly real. And so now these beliefs he has. He's been faced with the lies of them, the Chief Hind not wanting to deal with it. Now he's on the ground and definitely no one's appreciative, but also they're fighting back. They're punching back. And this breaking point that he might be racing towards is fascinating to me because I don't know, will his heart remain distant and cold is a big question I have, but I don't think this is a redemption story. But this is what happens when you're forced to learn new things up close.
I think that you just said a line from a future episode of Andor. I think that's either a Luthen or a Marvel line. That was kind of perfect.
This is what happens when you learn up close.
Step number 4, learn up close. I want an exercise video from Luthen with all his steps. Lie down on the floor. Stretch out your limbs. Yeah, I think what was really fascinating to me about Karn is, like I said, there's some implications from interviews that there's some relationship stuff going on. We're not fully seeing that yet, but we could maybe guess by the fact that he is coded as wealthy and privileged, right? From his attitude, from his stiffness, from his appearance. And everything he's saying is about ideology, right? That he believes in order. He is a company person, right? It is unacceptable that Primor Security died and it would not be pursued. But my sense is that he is not really about that ideology, right? He thinks he's about that ideology, but it's really about proving himself, validating his position. He believes that he has this power. He believes he is special and better. And he is itching for a chance to prove that power, to prove that station, right? And I think that's what's scary about authoritarian ideology. There's a lot that's scary about authoritarian ideology. I won't limit it to one thing. But when somebody is like, I don't really care that 2 absolute jerks got themselves killed, but I'm going to pretend I really, really care. I'm even going to lie to myself that I really, really care about that because it's a chance for me to have power. It's a chance for me to put on a boot and put it on someone's neck because I define myself as someone who can do that, and I need to prove that I can in order to believe it myself. So I feel like that's what's going on with him, and I think it plays out in all these fascinating ways, right? He's people tried to tell him the real truth. Hein is telling him a real truth of how this structure works. And he's going out on a dangerous limb while the boss is gone. And if he comes back with Andor alive or dead, he can make himself the hero. Mosk, Linus Mosk, I think is an ideology guy. I think he truly believes in order and in a strong fist, right? But he's manipulating Karn as well, right? He implies that to not go after Andor would be dereliction of duty, and I feel like it's a kind of wink and a nod that, like, if we go get Andor together, you can be the chief, right? And I think from Mosk's perspective of like, and then I'll have a chief that I can wrap around my finger with extremely easy motivation, right?
Yeah.
And I think to me, all of that comes out in that great, as you say, British office horrific speech, right? There's those layers of real truth where Mosk is on the ground with troops who have gone into actual dangerous places. They actually know this planet is dangerous and they're going to be unwanted, dangerous to them, and they're going to be unwanted. And he gives this very real speech. And I think we see that Karn is centered on himself because he doesn't have the experiences you're saying. He cannot relate to the troops in any sort of real and emotional way. And instead, he says ideological things that sound great. But because he is not a true believer yet, he's wearing the ideology to get what he personally wants. Even the ideology comes across as utterly empty. It's like he's reading motivational posters with no idea of what they mean, no humanity behind it, no personal experience behind it. So that's what's fascinating to me. He's just a raw, open wound looking to validate himself, no personal connection, and no true grasp on the ideology he's using to validate himself.
Yeah, the sergeant shows up here with a big stick and has been out there, like you said, which makes him dangerous. And he has that bluff and bluster line as opposed to acknowledging it or understanding. I think he might understand it. He just doesn't want to acknowledge it as actual communication from those on Ferrix. But it's sold to Karn as that's all lies. It's bluff and bluster. It means nothing there. And I love what you're saying, because if you go back to the beginning of this, again, when Andor's done, taken on the surface is not a great thing. No one in this community is celebrating it. I'll point that out. But that Karn, if he really believed in this idea, would be going internal, so to speak. Instead it's external, and we can keep all of ourselves safe. This idea of safety and security will be to go down to the ground here, get this very dangerous man. And again, maybe he is, but it isn't about that, right? It isn't about keeping anyone safe. Because if you wanted to do that, you clean up your own house, and they don't want to clean up their own house.
Yeah, it's about climbing the ladder. It's about validating your power. For both of them. And I'm so there's a lot of images throughout that invite you to look at Karn and Andor is two sort of younger men, regardless of their age, younger in their life journeys, right?
Yeah.
Like those images of like Karn staring at Andor's hologram, the way the end of part 3 is cut together with how this, traumatic event is for both of them is going to affect both of them and send them next on their journey. It was really striking to me in his awful speech. He has this line, there comes a time when doing nothing becomes the greatest risk of all, right? And that's almost echoing Jyn and Cassian and Radiss's noble speech and justification for going after the Death Star plans on Scarif, right? So to see this ideology, this belief that it is going to figure into Cassian's future sacrifice so meaningfully being said so hollow, like a cheap motivational poster.
Yeah.
That was so powerful to me because it shows you what is ideology when it's empty of meaning, of feeling, of relationships.
Well, and the big one for me, and this directly ties to the real world, because again, some folks are going to watch this and say, I see myself. Oh, that's not the one. That's not the one. And I love what you're suggesting of kind of sort of this dueling song of Cassian and Cyril. Because it's easy to hear those words and hear the same words used differently. And you hear the phrase "follow the money." I follow the empathy, the empathy. And Jyn and Cassian's words, you follow the empathy to the core of it, or you follow the core of it and you find the empathy. You're not finding any empathy in what the sergeant's suggesting, what Cyril Karn's suggesting. It's not there. It's non-existent. And those words become empty because it lacks that. At the end of the line, do your policies and your procedures and your beliefs lead to the empathy of people outside of yourself, people for those around you and communities in the world? Empathy. Empathy drives it forward. He has none. He doesn't understand it.
I love you saying that because, the end shots of Cassian are the pain of lost connection, lost home, right? of the painful childhood memory of leaving Kenari, but the warmth in the smile of Marva. And now here he is having to leave Marva again into an unknown future. It's all about empathy, right? And I feel like those terrifying shots of Karn just panicked and furious at the end aren't about, oh no, I got some soldiers killed. It's my play to get my boss fired and usurp his power failed. What's going to happen to me, Karn? It's, to me, just diametrically opposed.
Yeah, those last 5 minutes of episode 3 could be an episode. We could just do an episode on that because it's beautiful. There's just a lot of questions about the stuff with Marva and everything, and everything that we've learned so far. But that last shot of that smile, that looking at it's all powerful stuff. It's all emotional, and then the shot of again Kyle Soller just sitting there as Karn, crying. It's that phrase nerd rage, right? That comes up every now and then. I don't even know if that's what that means anymore, but of just like you just can't comprehend. You've snapped. It was powerful, and a different side of the same record.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have, the same life experiences that, a lot of, honestly, women, people of color, who have had with angry privilege, right? That was privilege rage to me, It's
a good way to look at it. Yeah.
How dare anyone? I did all of this to prove that I am powerful and I have a right to be powerful and I'm inherently powerful and I should be the one with power always. And some people question my power and made me feel like maybe I'm not powerful. I have seen that. I had at schools when I was bullied, right? I have seen that look of like, oh, the person who believes they are inherently powerful and made of power and have a right to power have had it questioned. And it's so frightening of what are they going to do next to validate that they are powerful. That was a great cliffhanger with Karn.
Yeah. Because there's, again, pulling out, we'll see where it ends up. I just don't, I don't think this ends with Karn putting down his blaster and picking up a rebel hat. Getting a rebel blaster. I don't think that's going to happen.
12 episodes is a long journey. Well, we'll see where we end up, right?
And I bet if they do, they get there in a powerful way, but that's what's going on at the end of it. I think you're right. And so Harding, it's a choice. Star Wars is about choices. And I've talked about this before when we talked about very real world things. Maybe you feel your intentions, Karn, are good, but they're not taken that way because they aren't that way. And when faced with that and faced with wrestling with that, do you let your heart harden to those communicating this to you? And if you do let your heart harden, the bigger problems will follow.
Yeah.
And he'll cause them.
Oh yeah. I think the subtitle of this could be Andor : Karn hoists himself on his own petard for 12 episodes. I suspect that we have similar things that we want to talk about here. Maybe some different words to them, but this idea of community versus the rigid authoritarianism. I had some ideas about how people's lives are valued, that kind of stuff. I think we're probably in the same ballpark. So why don't you start with your thoughts on some of those ideas?
Yeah, I wrote down the ideas of just family / community. It's going to be pretty important. It's always important to Star Wars. You had a wonderful tweet about. I chose violence one morning. You chose a heartfelt description of the show, because that's such a Star Wars theme: family, found family, community, all that stuff. The people of Ferrix coming together to warn and defend. Tim betrays that. Casa, part of something strong in his past. We're going to get a lot more about that. We're missing some information. We're there, but I loved just him putting on the face paint of the leader, right? Looking for guidance, looking for that community, looking for that connection. And then later on, you flash forward, Brasso is there as support. I love Marva. There's a line when they're arguing over who knows. And like, well, you've told some people that's family. Well, if we're making a list, and that's start the breakdown of that there. And what's going on? There was a little shot. I love the shot of the work gloves, and a few of them are missing, which tells a story of why aren't they there? What's happened? What is this community lost? And the flip side of that, again, Cyril Karn not even connecting to his own version of family or community in a horrible yet also amusing way. It all kind of that's the starting point for me, I guess.
Yeah, no, I love everything you're saying, and I think for me, what's powerful about the tale of community is we get to see two homes that Cassian has had, and I feel like they're coded in this very classic Star Wars way as places of grounded, productive community. Right? They celebrate the Star Wars theme of stronger together. Right? That family is what matters. Family is what motivates us. We are all one in a large family of existing, even within the Force, right? We're all symbiotic beings who benefit from everything going well from everybody. These are classic Star Wars themes. But then diving deeper in that, we kind of see it in two different ways. We see Kenari as this group of kids having their own culture, their traditions, with the paint, the way that they react to a foreign ship is a known thing, right? They're going through this. There are rites of passage that it feels like that maybe young Cassian hasn't maybe passed yet, right?
Yeah.
They're coded as honestly a community at risk. We don't know how that mine was abandoned. We don't quite know why there are no parents there. There's this Lord of the Flies vibe, but they have made community and they're stronger together, right?
Yeah.
And then everyone on Ferrix is coded as being a community, right? They're scraping, working, getting by, but they have each other. A Star Wars story with multiple drinking establishments that you can choose from, right? Which one's too crowded? Cassian hasn't been at that one in a long time.
Yeah.
It's all community. It's day jobs in date nights, and the Time Grappler as this cultural institution climbing up to the center of that what looks like kind of the community building at the heart of the city in Rick's Road, right? They even use a phrase, I think, is by Chob a couple times, right? They're coded so much as having a true community and society. You mentioned as well, I love when that Primor technician says to Karn, have you ever been there? And he's like, doesn't matter. And she's like, they have their own way of doing things. They're coded in this positive way of, even though they're both going through a hard time, of societies that are stronger because they work together. And then we see both of those places violated by the rigid authoritarianism or the fear of rigid authoritarianism.
Yeah, the destruction or evasion of cultures is obviously a big one here, in both timelines. Yeah, very clearly, and destroying, and it's one of the things we talk about, which is the oppression of the Empire. I love how it's played out, and love celebrating it. But I think it's so powerful that in Solo, in Rogue One, we talked often about how does Han Solo feel it. The industry is destroyed on Corellia. His father drinks himself to death or whatever, leaves. Not dead. I think he might be in the comics if I remember it. Infus Nest, again, going to that, all these communities and planets affected by the criminal syndicates, not even the Empire. The Empire lets the criminal syndicates do this stuff. It is this slow erosion there. And this is just, I hear a lot of people describe it. It's on the ground. It is on the ground. The show is on the ground, and you see it up front, this destruction or invasion of what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just some classic Star Wars images, right, to make this contrast, the idea of blow darts versus blasters, right? I mean, that's very classic Star Wars imagery of the Ewoks against the Empire. Finn coming up with the idea of we're not going to use speeders, we're going to use Orbaks and the Star Destroyer, of like the organic in the community versus the kind of technological terrors. Right. Young Casa seeing his face in the literal black mirror of the ship. I mean, I thought of great images that really support these ideas. And I do think it's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So that scene where he sees himself in the mirror is that was a repeat viewing moment where I think I honed in on a little more. It's beautiful. It's haunting. It's important. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, like he's just really looking at who he is. Question of if he has seen himself, if he's ever seen a surface this clean that isn't natural, that isn't water, all those kinds of questions that we don't fully know. But then when we get to Ferrix, right, the contrast between the way Sergeant Linus Mosk talks about it, right? Of we need a stronger hand with these affiliate planets. And one of my favorite lines, there's fomenting out there, sir. Pockets of fomenting. Corporate tactical forces are the Empire's first line of defense, right? And if you dig down into that, just like in Solo, we saw the Empire saying like, yeah, let's kind of use the criminal syndicates to get what we want and squeeze the freedom of the galaxy as well. We'll do that with corporations too. We'll use them as foot soldiers to step on people's necks, so nobody has the basic luxuries of life, so that they can start thinking about rebellion. So all that's going on there, and this is, you've talked about it. It's pretty blatant of what's happening in episode 3 of the idea of this rigid authoritarian approach without a lot of creativity, right? Of like, we're going to march in with force. We're going to put pressure on the relationships. We're going to try to literally block people in. We're going to flank and control, and we're going to use all of our military moves. And of course, our might's going to be enough. And then in contrast, the people of Ferrix using culture, geography, tools of labor to act as one organism. Everything from the bells to tying down the ship to the hiding and the silence. It's all connection. And even Luthen and Cassian are creative in the way that they deal with the rigid procedural moves. So that was one of the things that I think is moving, important. It tells a story. And for me, it's like, that's Star Wars. There's a million moments in Star Wars to compare this to. This is a core idea of Star Wars.
All you do, one leap, and you got an Ewok taking out a biker scout with a rope. It's the same. Right? It's the same.
Yeah, it's the same, but we're kind of seeing it in this, different way. Anyway,
the Ewoks aren't drunk and they didn't just have sex,
that we know of or saw on screen.
That we know of.
Yeah, that's the sound of a reckoning. Obviously, it was a powerful line in the trailer, but even more powerful in the context of having seen Marva's home raided and Cassian's bedroom, including his bantha toy, violated.
And by the way, I hate to just keep going to jokes, but can someone cut together a super cut of Ewoks blowing the war horn and then Marva just going, "That's the sound of a reckoning"? Has that happened yet? That's the sound of a reckoning. You hate it when it stops. Why?
Yeah. Oh, why is it silent? Where did the bears go? Marva's best line might be, what does it mean when it goes silent?
I have thoughts on that one later too. It's such a great moment.
But it really is about all of this, right? It's about the assumption that our blasters and our boots and our system of authority gives us authority. The Empire gives us authority. We can march in here and do whatever. And Marva's is powerful because it's the moment where she's like, I've taken the power away from this individual soldier. Yeah. He thinks he has his blaster on me, but I have the power right now because I know the truth of what's going on and he does not.
Yes, sir.
What other ideas did you want to discuss?
Let's see. 2 other big ones here. We continue even to discuss the destruction. What I'm putting is the destruction or invasion of cultures. It's very clear, particularly going in the flashbacks with Casa and his community there. And again, we don't know the whole story there. You're right. You could make a Lord of the Flies reference, but just say what happened to the adults? How did they form up? I think it's going to be fascinating to learn a little bit more of that if we do. And again, I think it spiritually lines up with I've been in the fight since I was 6 years old because he's not 6 there. So what happened 5-6 years ago here? There's some not timeline questions, but it's like, I'm curious to see how far, what they're saying with some of it. Because you're mentioning Republic, the Republic officers, the Republic ship is coming. Part of the reason they decide to take, or Marva decides to take Casa out of there, but it's a separatist patch.
I Googled that 7 times to be like, that is a separatist insignia, which, we can dive a little bit more into those questions when we talk canon. But I really agree with you. There's questions of who is doing what to Kenari, right? Yeah.
Who's doing what? And Marva kind of knowing the lay of the land, the Republic's coming here. And again, it's just simply a statement of, hey, they're both the same. You and I would argue that Star Wars does have something to say on that, but Marva doesn't necessarily have to agree with that, or she's feeling it in a different way. It's a perspective thing. Dying to know more about that. But even the mind, even this vision of this world, this resource, just being mined on out of here, but it's abandoned. But then here later on, because this is clearly, Old Republic era, so to speak, Clone Wars era, wherever you want to say. But later on, the Imperials abandoned it because of an Imperial mining disaster, which clearly is taken from Darth Vader's index card playbook on how to handle this stuff. So I'm just fascinated, and you can look at it from the Star Wars point of view, but it's definitely what's going on. It's what's going on with Casa, as we now know his birth name, his real name is part of his real identity. And that ties into all of this ties into the search for who you really are, which we mentioned above. Even the description of episode 1 is, if you go to Disney Plus, is like Cassian searching for clues to his past. The connection you're talking about with the sister, but it's a search for who he was, what was taken from him, where is he going now, looking for a connection, looking for better connections, maybe honoring connections, and remembering how we got there. And there's so many questions about Marva. Did she do good? Did she do right? Did she do bad? She clearly ends up being right. A father figure killed. What happened to his parents? Keeping his old weapon around. Her finding that next to the Bantha, by the way. Love that. I'm fascinated by it because it's powerful and it's potentially, a through line of the entire series.
I think everything you're saying there is so great. And I think it makes for a really complex and interesting character where Cassian obviously has great love for Marva and is traumatized by the death of who we're assuming Clem when Luthen says father, but we could be wrong on that. So there is this kind of great love for his found family, including B2 Emo.
Oh yeah, the best.
But it's Diego Luna has talked about it being an immigrant story, right? So like here's this family I found, but I had another family. I had another culture. What is the truth of that? That's powerful. I mean, honestly, everything's, pretty explicit with the corpos, the jerks who, shake him down and harass him in the bar for absolutely no reason. Right. Yeah. But to me, it is powerful that they make the cruel taunt that makes sense for the geography of that planet of, did he swim across? Did you swim across? But like when I heard that this morning, sort of the gut punch of saying that to somebody who is, whose heritage is being Mexican, right? That's one of those moments where like it absolutely works in the world of Star Wars. It works in the geography of that planet. But it's a gut punch if you think about what's being said in the connections to the real world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely is. It's a little bit of go back to where you came from type of attitude. Absolutely is. I mean, almost to the point of not even like, coded, right? But it is. It is what it is.
Yeah. And there's that was my last big idea, that there is just kind of a lot about value and in class. There's obviously a ton of class stuff going on with, the corporals have a luxury sector where they can break the laws that they enforce on others. Yeah. Just the fact that Karn looks like he's literally going to squeak if you touch him, right? I mean,
he's going to just explode.
But there's this other ideas of values of just kind of like whose deaths matter and why, right? Alpha on Kenari. It matters that the Republic visitors on Kenari died. That Marva's perspective is the Republic's going to slaughter anybody they think is involved with that or even saw it, right? These fools ignite all of this by getting themselves killed. Cassie doesn't want to. And then we're kind of left with the question of Tim, the value of Tim's life. Will his death light a fire? All that kind of stuff. But last thing I wanted to share with this idea of value is if this is about Cassian searching for identity, by the end of part 3, everything's coming down to what is Cassian's value, right? To Marva, to Bix, to Brasso, to B2 Emo, they just love him and want him to be okay, right? And his value is they love him. For Cyril Karn and Linus Mosk, they don't really care that he killed those two a-holes. He's a stepping stone. He's valuable as a trophy. Even to Luthen, who we don't get to quite fully know yet. He's I think he's encouraging, like you said, Cassian, to explore his truth. But he's straight up saying, like, you're more valuable to me than that box because you're talented. You're a talented, motivated asset. So he's being valued for being an asset. And then Cassian himself can't see more value in his own life than that box. So I love that the third part ends with this question, really raising this question of what gives Cassian value, and by sort of philosophical extension, what gives a person value.
I absolutely love that. I think it's played so well with what you're describing with Luthen, kind of like, you ain't the box, man. You ain't the box. And I think that's a lesson for all of us. We are not the box.
We are not the box. Any more big thematic ideas that you'd like to discuss?
Here's the final one. I don't know if it's a theme, Joseph, but I'm calling it the lessons of being a spy from Luthen, which I want an entire episode on.
An old 50s video, right? Of like, here's the rules about being a spy, and also some posture and etiquette rules.
Yeah, I mean, look, you and I have been primed to love Luthen from the beginning. It's just, it's been right up our alley for old crusties in Star Wars. And he delivered. We'll talk more about some of our favorite moments. But yeah, I think it also ties into the bigger themes. There's obviously more serious things going on. But for a show that's supposed to be a spy thriller, I love that we got like step 1. Know your escape. Step 2, bombs on the door. Like it was really one of my favorite parts of the show.
Never carry anything you don't control. Right? Yeah, it is really, really great. He seems like just like an absolutely terrifying instructor you'd have if you were in the Scouts or something. Yeah, great. Yeah. I can't wait to discuss more Luthen. But for now, I think we are ready to take a break. Only 90 minutes into the show, we're ready to take a break. We'll be right back. And we are back to continue our discussion of the first 3 episodes of Andor. And Ken, I am understanding that we have the potential for a special guest.
During the break, real world stuff, I had to run out to get our youngest Chihuahua, Francis, who's in my office. Normally, she'll curl up and sleep in a little bed, but they're doing some work on our roofs right now, and there's a chance that she will freak out. So I apologize if suddenly there's a Chihuahua barking in the background.
The thing that I'm concerned about is if there is some Chihuahua barking and then suddenly silence, I might get a little frightened. What does the silence mean? Where is Franny? What is she planning?
Her barks are the sound of a reckoning indeed. So, yes.
All right. We are going to continue our discussion. We always like starting with kind of like the big ideas, but then spend a lot of time on the fun details. We like to talk about the canon. We like to talk about some of the fun action moments because Star Wars is always still an action adventure serial. Even this one's got some great action scenes, some great cliffhangers. We love moments of comedy and whimsy that make us love the characters. So we're going to discuss all of those details. We're going to start first with canon. And this is very interesting because I did see some people react of like, oh, man, I'm happy this isn't full of Easter eggs or known characters, all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I would agree that it is not as dense as some shows, but there is actually a lot of fascinating stuff going on. How did you feel about the overall sort of I recognize that, or that is a connection to another narrative or another character about the amount of it in this show?
We're 90 minutes in. Get ready for 90 more minutes. Look, I have some heated thoughts on the debate around what now people call Easter eggs. And I do agree the term Easter egg has become something else now, which you just have to kind of accept what it means now. It's an Easter egg in the past was the animators put a hidden message there for you there. And sometimes you didn't want to see the message unless you were a kid. Yeah, so it's interesting, and then again, I will argue if anyone tells you that Star Wars is just busy reminding you about Star Wars, they're wrong. And AT-ST showing up in Rogue One, which was mocked ferociously on the internet, is because that's the equipment of that time. That's just stop all that kind of thoughts. Analyze the why, analyze the error. So yes, the show lacked some of the more over the top things, but there was a lot in there and some really interesting decisions about what made the show. Yeah,
no, I really, really agree. I think for me that the Easter eggs, the cameos, whatever words that are being a little bit tortured out of their actual meaning. Retroactive continuity, I would throw in that pile of being a little bit morphed out of their original meaning. For me, 9 times out of 10, it is that the stated perspective of the creators and producers of Star Wars is that it's one big story and that there are connections. There are meaningful, emotional connections. If a planet gets name dropped that from the Clone Wars, it's often a vital story about what was the government like when we met the planet. What is it like now. And so for me, 9 times out of 10, the connections can be fun. Like, I recognize that, but if you dig in, it has deeper meaning. Like Terrace Nube, right? Terrace Nube's poor corpse in Obi-Wan Kenobi could just be like a fun and tragic. I recognize that, but it actually, that specific Jedi tied to the themes of that episode. So anyway, enough of that. Let's get into the details of Andor. First big one for me is BBY as a measurement of time is back, baby. Battle before Yavin is back.
That's right.
On the screen, we get the establishing of what planet Cassian is on and some details that it's a corporate sector. And then it says 5 BBY. And I'm sure some people are like, is that how much he paid to land there? Right. But I would imagine most people listening to this podcast who are invested for a long time, particularly in the expanded universe and, companion information books and that was the timeline for Star Wars, the Battle of Yavin, of that being in Star Wars being the kind of ground zero of the timeline going before and after. So how did you feel about that making a canonical return?
I love it because, again, they don't at this point in the story, no one's keeping time that way, right? If you had said it's 5 years before the Battle of Yavin and you go, the Battle of what now? So I understand, and they did, and there is an alternate timeline out there. It's like it is the timeline. I remember that showed up, and I went to school in my youth in America when they were trying to get us all to learn the metric system. I completely understand the metric system works for the world. I remember going, I'm good. I'm sticking to inches here. I was 6, but I was like, this side of the ruler looks confusing to me. So I remember looking at that new time being kept, the new timeline. I was like, no, Battle of Yavin is a great measuring stick. So I understand. Again, in real world, no one's keeping time that way in the Star Wars world. But I do, as a Star Wars fan, just love it on the screen. It's simple. It's more clear for me.
Yeah, it's simple. And I think if you interpret it or, want to wait 5 minutes and have 8,000 articles write it for you or ask a Star Wars friend, right? It's simple, clear information about where we are in the timeline. This is about 5 years out from the Battle of Yavin, which means it's about 5 years out from Rogue One. So you can place it, So I enjoyed it, and I think for me, I know there are people who love it, who've studied it. Right, there are probably tattoos of BBY timelines down people's arms. So I was just kind of happy for those people who love it.
Yeah, no, I get it. I love it.
Okay, so moving on, this whole fest thing, a main storyline in these 3 episodes is that Andor and the entire Andor family tell people that he was born on Fest. That's what is in his official Imperial records. We are learning that he was born on Kenari. They make that very clear. He was born there. Whatever else happened with that abandoned mine and the missing parents, he was born there. So Fest mainly exists in canon is in Rogue One tie-in and resource books. It's mentioned offhand in canon, but we've never spent a bunch of quality time there. But it's a fascinating thing to discuss because, particularly in the Rogue One, visual dictionary or other title, Ultimate Visual Guide. There's a lot of Cassian backstory, including that he's from Fest and what happened to his parents and what motivated him to join the rebellion, which now makes this visual dictionary, visual guide read like propaganda placed by Andor.
It does.
How do you feel about all that?
It's surprisingly complicated. I have to separate, some of my past thoughts. Like I was very much on, there's some folks upset that there was this new wrinkle to the Poe Dameron story and Rise of Skywalker being a spice runner before, and it didn't line up. And I was very much on the side of that ain't no retcon. That is just new additional information to the point of being maybe grumpy about it. But so I have to take that version of me and try to align it with this version who's like, but I knew it was called Fest. You're saying it wasn't? That's not the answer to this trivia question? And I ran up against it. It's funny because I occasionally do videos on the side for fandom. And one of them I did was the Andor trailer. It's like a pop-up video. And so that shot of what is now Casa on Kenari looking at the abandoned mine, I put a pop-up like, this is most likely Fest. So now I'm like, well, now I'm embarrassed. And so I have to separate those kind of feelings. I have to separate that knowing trivia answers isn't necessarily about what you love or understanding Star Wars. And then there's some real world things. I have not seen this Gilroy's given a lot of interviews, and God bless him. If I did something this good, I would too. But there's a little bit, I had to separate fact from fiction in my own mind of he probably has, I got a great story. Here's where Cassian begins. This is what we'd like to do. Diego Luna comes in as like executive producer. Oh, that's great. And then at some point someone says, well, he was born on Fest though. And that's not Fest. And he has two parents and he's been in the fight since they were 6 and they were kind of on the separatist side. And how does that align? And I think they've handled it in a great way. It's intriguing to me. So, yep, we might have to reprint some books. Yep, the video I wrote, at least I got paid because it no longer is accurate. I just think it's very interesting because I think I assume there's a little bit of I didn't know that. We're going to still tell the story and find a way to work it out. However, it's also so done so powerfully that I don't know if that's true. That's just me assuming of Gilroy and the writing team doing that. Maybe they had that thought from the beginning. Hey, what if he was kind of lying about who he was because he had to, and he's disconnected from that? And this is part of the search of who he is. That's way fascinating. So at the end of the day, I really love it, despite the fact that I already went to the Wikipedia page. That the editors have done some great changes overnight.
It is really fun to see the amazing quick draw changes that happen on Wikipedia. Yeah, I think I have multiple feelings about it. It's a conversation that goes around, I think, with people who are really diehard Star Wars fans. Part of the joy of the canon connections is the immersion, right? To feel like if you read a truth in a comic book or a novel, or you play a truth in a video game, that's the truth and it enriches the storytelling for you. Right. And I get that connection to canon. That's why I care about canon. You have the great phrase emotional canon, and that's helpful for me because I care more about the emotional canon. I care more that this planet went through a revolution, right? Or this planet believed the Empire, and then what happens 10 years later? All those kind of things. Or Obi-Wan used to like to fly, but then he had a traumatic experience and connected more with organic creatures and beasts of burdens and preferred that as a means of transportation. That's emotional canon that carries through to Kenobi, the TV show. So I understand when people just have an immediate, like, are you taking something that I kind of internalized about these characters and changing it? I totally get that. Then I also have that thought of like, okay, let's pull way back because the majority of people watching the show will have no idea that a resource book from 2016 was played with in any way, right?
Yeah,
it's good storytelling on the screen. The vast majority of people who see it will never know that that's a change. And then my final thought is a personal one that it honestly makes Cassian's page in that book more intriguing to me because it Star Wars always has a level of do you trust the narrator? Like in individual scenes, the thing that Luke said, is that true? The thing that Obi-Wan Kenobi believes, is that true? Or is that Obi-Wan's perspective? Did Palpatine, is there even a half-truth in that? Or is he just straight up lying to manipulate someone? Even down to who's telling us the story of Star Wars? If it starts with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, who wrote that? Who's saying that? Who told the audience it's 5 BBY? Because you're right, only a time traveler inside Andor would know that. And to me, it just makes it an even more interesting layer of, are the visual guides reliable narrators? Is every page a reliable narrator? Because it isn't just like a change. It isn't just like, his name used to be Cassian, but we've renamed him Davis, right? Like, it's not just like a change for no reason. It's, if you want to dive into it, it's intriguing in terms of what does this storytelling actually mean, and who do we believe and why and how and when.
Yeah, so, the end result is I'm really on board for it. Yeah, if they had just simply said, no, he was born on Kenari, what's Fest? Then I'd be like, all right, I don't know. My feelings would have been hurt, but no, I love it. It's used so well.
Yeah, and I also think it is a big answer as to why there are not books like this for The Mandalorian, why a bunch of things were announced and then canceled. I have no evidence for this. My personal assumption is that Favreau is sensitive to these kind of things of like, well, we just introduced this character in one episode. We don't know that a season from now that character is not going to be hugely important, and we're going to want to say a bunch of things about who they are, and we don't want to upset fans, and we don't want to be tied to a paragraph in a book.
Yeah.
Which I know is complicated for fans. I'm just throwing out my opinion. Okay, shall we move on from Fest?
We're gonna have to.
Okay, let's move on from Fest to Bleep. I was so invested in the story, I did not even register until my second viewing that there was an S-bomb in Star Wars. We talk about so many Star Wars stories, Ken. I believe there was an S-bomb in a book in the last year or so that we talked about.
Yeah. Oh God, what was that?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure other people have noted. I don't remember off the top of my head. But it's relatively recent. So this is I believe the first time in live action that the word has appeared, but I believe it appeared in a book as well. So how do you feel about the old S-bomb in Star Wars?
I'll confess something here. I don't think I really figured that out till this morning. I'd seen it 3 times through. I didn't pay attention, like not in the way I just was. It was part of the wallpaper in a good way. Even Marva's saying those primo bastards, like that worked for me too. And that is a testament to the mature tone and TV rating. It does say strong. It has a strong language warning. It just felt right at home.
Yeah.
Felt right at home.
It didn't register for me when I watched it the first time because it is so Sergeant Linus Mosk's emotional truth in that moment. That when I started watching Andor on Disney Plus at midnight last night, the screeners didn't have the specific warnings. So the strong coarse language was like, did they say Carabast? Is there some Star Wars swear words? Like, what are they talking about? And like, oh. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, this just goes in the massive bucket of, is it too real world for you in Star Wars? And everybody has a different line, right? We've talked about it a million times. Big ass door that Poe says is too real world for some people. I don't care what universe you're from. That's got to hurt. It's too real world for me. That's just always going to be a thing. Real world stuff is in Star Wars, and sometimes it works for people, and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah.
Look, I'll confess something there. Sometimes when I hear, like, I love Ichuta, it's just tied to my, whatever McClunky is, I love. Sometimes Carabast or Dank Farrik or whatever, it actually it takes me out of the story more than an S-bomb. That makes sense. In case of point, I mean, because again, you're just watching, it's on television, you're watching House of Dragons, they're swearing up and down, it just doesn't stand out to me, I guess, but it just seems so organic and part of it. I didn't really notice it till a repeat viewing, where if he had said Dank Farrik, I'd have been like, oh, hey, the Star Wars curse word. So I actually kind of prefer this in a way.
Yeah, no, and I think Star Wars is a vast galaxy, right? Because it seems like Dank Farrik is very popular among bounty hunters in their ilk.
Yeah.
The Mandalorian swear word to begin with. Ichuta's a Hutt swear word, right? Carabast, we heard a lot from Zeb in Rebels, and Han says it in a book, which I loved, because that is honestly, I don't have any problem with the adult word being in Star Wars. This is a more adult Star Wars. They put up the warning, all that. I don't personally have a problem with that. My only problem ever with the naughty S word in Star Wars is I feel like if it exists, Han Solo should be saying it 90% of the time.
I agree with that.
Yeah. All right. That's our deep dive into naughty S word. Shall we move on?
Yes. McClunky. Let's move on.
McClunky. Okay. Yeah. So you brought this up. I'm so glad. There's this question of where exactly are we on the timeline, because we were offered no BBY when we were seeing young Andor on Kenari. Marva seems to be a person of authority. She is calling, saying that the Republic frigate is coming, and that a Republic officer has been killed, and the Republic is going to retaliate violently. And that's why she needs to get Andor off there. And yet the logos are what we know as the logos of the Separatists from the Clone Wars era. So do you feel like that is just an opening to storytelling that we're going to hear more about? Is that how you're approaching it? Or are you approaching it some other way?
Yeah, I'm approaching it that way. It'd be it would be a giant leap for me to think that it was some sort of error, right? That the wrong patch got put on several people.
The several people and the camera lingers on it. There's no way.
Yeah, so I'm intrigued
Not
by
a coffee cup or a jeans guy in the background, right?
This isn't Daenerys's coffee. This was intentional. So I'm very much intrigued by it, and intrigued by again the Imperial mining disaster. But this is not the Imperial era right here. So there's a lot more to learn, a lot more about Marva. I think it just played well. And talk about connecting to bigger story. There it is. There's some great questions that come out of that.
Yeah, I think for me, it does really feel like there is a lot to fill in Cassian's story from, his arrest record. He's had some run-ins, right? Is it indeed Clem, as we're assuming, who was hanged? And what did he do to have that happen? On Kenari, that mine seems abandoned, right? When and how and why were the parents of those kids miners, who fell to a disaster and they've been getting on themselves, Imperial mining disaster, as you say, often is code for we did something awful on that planet, Marva is claiming that they don't need masks from whatever has poisoned those officers, but is that something that's going to affect the planet? So a lot of great questions swirling around it. And I think that a little bit of my headcanon question is, are the Clone Wars fomenting? Is Dooku? Is this in a time where Dooku is doing some fomenting? But the Clone Wars haven't broken out, and there's no reason that Marva would recognize that. Like that's about to be the symbol of the other side in a civil war.
That's intriguing. That's really intriguing. Hadn't really thought about that. It is her into this moment. I guess the Republic got some new uniforms.
Or recognize it as, maybe that was originally a symbol of a part of the Republic, a sector of the Republic, I don't know for sure in modern canon, but there is also like her perception of the Republic to be dealt with, right? That we know that this is in general a time where Palpatine is eroding the Republic, and we have good figures like Padme and Bail and Mon Mothma fighting even when Cassian's that young to keep it a better place. But we know that it's slipping. So maybe Marva's right, or maybe Marva is wrong. Maybe Marva, thought she was saving Andor's life and she wasn't.
Right. Yeah. That it's such a look into next week. We'll hopefully get some more answers. I definitely hope we're not done with Marva. I don't think we are, but man, that look back at her when she's piloting it out was so powerful. But also because I had that, like why'd you take him? I get the reasons. Your reasoning is good. Why'd you need to? It's just there's a lot there. We're gonna get more.
Yeah. So then moving on. Calf is all over the Star Wars books. I hooted and hollered with excitement because it so fits into this picture of Star Wars. We're getting to see a little bit of day-to-day time to have Bix wake up and go, I hope you have calf. That made me very happy. How about you?
That made me happy, as did blue takeout noodles. Like it was all there.
Is all there. A little weirded out by just seeing Tim Carlo's socks. That might have been the moment that was like, okay, this guy's named Tim, and those are just his gray, boring socks. Those aren't space socks. I'm enraged. Yeah, that's great. I saw some people post that. We've finally seen socks in Star Wars. Like I hadn't stopped and think about it like that, but yeah, it's true. Yeah. Everything else I have on my list is a deeply incomplete list of little background things. The planet from Rogue One, Wobani, is mentioned by Tim. If you have the captions on Luthen's ship is a Fondor mod droid, and Fondor is an important planet. We mentioned Cassian's Bantha toy. We see a holler ship that is also featured in the video game Jedi Fallen Order. Mosk shouts for Bacta when the speeder blows up. And then we just have lots of different aliens that we have seen before in the background, including Simeon in the yard, Aki Aki on the train, Steel Pecker in the yard. All these just sound like songs. But yeah, I did not make a complete list of known and recognized, aliens, but it is not full of fan service kind of, hey, look at this, right? But if you are a fan of Star Wars, it feels absolutely of the galaxy. It is full of connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I know you said you had a complete list, so I'm just adding to what I thought I saw. There was it's not necessarily it's not a Tito, but when Bix is walking through town, end of episode 1, it might be either Tito or is it the character, the type that was yelling at Rey when she's cleaning the parts at the beginning of Force Awakens?
Yeah. The little being with the sort of compact robotic mask.
Yeah. A lot of people point out Crusher Rodoon maybe there, or a similar setup there. Love that. And then look, I'm always excited for a Y-Wing, so seeing a Y-Wing in the background was fun too.
Yeah, no, a lot of great stuff. So we have a lot to talk about, and other people will do much more complete listings. Anything else in there that you wanted to talk about?
No. Other than, I'll say this though, Aki going to Ferrix. I want that sub story.
They get around the galaxy a little bit, right? Because they're on Tatooine as well.
Yeah, I love that.
And some of it might be like, yes, we're reusing costumes for budget reasons, but it's also answers this sort of like, we didn't in the sequel trilogy, we didn't see as many known aliens, so it's fun to see them getting out into the galaxy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's get into action. How did you feel about the level of just action scenes, and what were some of your favorite moments from them?
I was fine with it. I think that you just kind of know what they're going for, and the lack of traditional pew pew pew. I think that's going to come, and by the time the third episode, shows up, and a lot of the action's there, it really pays off. The tension of the standoff, the tension of the third episode is next level from the beginning to the end. It just builds so well. So I really love that. It meant, again, Luthen setting all the traps like a spy mentor, the whole plot to get out. It really paid off to where, especially on rewatch, I did miss what was happening in the first or second episodes. But I did initially. And then again, going when I said up top where I was like, I watched the first 2 episodes when I had the screeners and then put it aside for a day because I just had to. I felt I was missing it. Again, I don't know what I wanted. X-Wings shooting TIE fighters. I don't know. But I just was like, okay, maybe, they're going for something different. But then the third episode, it just explodes out. And I think also this could go into the bigger themes, but not using stormtroopers for this initial conflict was really powerful because it ties into more real world themes. You can't hide behind some of the real world statements like you could have if it was just stormtroopers from that galaxy doing the stomping. But the fact that we saw their faces, it was a local police force, for lack of a better term, a security sentry team, whatever, corporate police, whatever you want to say. That was a great choice. That was one moment where, because we know they're coming, it worked. It was effective for the story, effective there. So all the action built up to that. And then I'll say my favorite action moment, you mentioned it, but when Marva stops talking after she says the lines about the sound stopping, that's some action.
That's your favorite action moment?
Yeah. Because that is definitely, like you said, it is a jab. It is a power move. It is an action.
Yeah. No, this to me is the action I really enjoyed because it is more about the tension of when the action happens, it's still going to be, moments of it are definitely going to be like fun and thrilling, but it's going to be real life and death. We know these characters. They're not, nameless extras in the background. I guess some of the Primor guards are, but we do actually get to know them a little bit in their perspective from the speech and their attitude, all that stuff. So there's that great spy thriller where the action is just a total release of the tension that you build and build and build to. Yeah. I'm totally fine with that. And this goes to me of like, for myself wanting different flavors of Star Wars. I totally understand if somebody's like, I kind of like Star Wars when it's an adventure and where's the big space battle and where's the big ground battle and where's the lightsaber battle, and I would be like, cool, maybe Andor might not be your favorite Star Wars. That's okay because that's one of the options. You can go watch Empire Strikes Back. Cool, no problem. So I'm okay with that. It's different. Is end of the day for me. And then within that, I really liked the headbutt of doom, as I'm calling it. It was to me a great subversion. It's kind of like an action move. We've seen a lot across everything, right? But it's a pretty visceral, get out of trouble, lure someone in close. But the absolute horror of like, and then he fell and cracked his head on something. and he died.
Yeah.
You know, it makes it takes it from a generic action move to, oh no, consequences immediately.
Yeah, well, yeah, again, because the way Diego Luna plays it, of just like, get him up, he's dead, and his look of like, huh, leap, oh no, you know, that was
not
great.
his intention at all. Yeah. The blow dart sequence, I was amazed when I watched it back that it was relatively fast, because when the first time I watched it, I could have sworn it was 180 minutes long.
Yeah.
The tension was that high. I mean, I love anything that is playing with those images of the rigid and the mechanical versus the more organic and natural, because it's such a huge part of Star Wars. But just those vulnerable kids who are going to be picked off by a blaster, it gave it such great tension. So I really enjoyed is not the right word. I was really invested.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And then everything else is the resistance on Ferrix, right? The surprise of the ship trying to take off. When we go from Brasso kind of being like at the beginning, like, Cassian, get your bleep together. I guess he could use the S word. S word together. There's some gloves waiting for you. Just come here and work a day and stop getting yourself into trouble. I guess I'll cover from you, but I'm a little annoyed to know I got your back. Yeah. These people are not welcome here. That made the ship trying to take off extremely powerful, and like just the panic of the dude, the security person would be like, "Stop fighting it,"
Oh yeah, that was a real effective sequence too of just trigger happy soldier there or officer there. But from a different perspective, again, talk about, Karn learning up close and being on the streets. So it's like you pull that trigger, you kill Tim, and the look on his face is haunting. It's and even the other one going, hey, get out of here, go get the ship, give me your blaster. It just adds to the confusion, the stress, and the tension, and everyone kind of having to pay more attention to what they believe and what they're acting on.
Yeah. And to me, that portrait of, if you go in there with that attitude of we're the force, we don't have to negotiate with anyone, we can force anything, right? And then that mindset causing him to escalate when he didn't need to, right? Like little gray socks Tim Carlo, I don't feel like was a real physical threat to them, right?
Right.
So that really potent, an unnecessary escalation that leads to this other not unnecessary, but this other escalation, right? With the tying the ship down. It's a interesting conversation. It's beyond even just simple misuse of power. It's misunderstanding of your power, misunderstanding the situation, and I've seen it for the first time. And this happens a lot, I think, unfortunately. So it was very real world, but it leads to a good Brasso with great action. And that sequence was wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. The slap charge, the fact that they're called slap charges, but that the short amount of time that Luthen gives Andor, brace yourself, boom, happens immediately, and then the great tension of that Primor guard walking in and then just falling and the blaster going flying. That was a good moment.
It's just everything with the chains and the metal, everything about it was wonderful.
My last one here is just generally Luthen's blaster technique. I'm assuming from some of the trailers that we've seen that Luthen comes from, upper class, comes from some money. Something happened in his life that led him to this ideology, and even down to his it looks like he's been trained, in some sort of luscious countryside to shoot steelpecker, right? Like he's hunting space pheasant, the way he has that little delicate brace of the arm under the blaster, right? Even the way he shoots his blaster, it's not cocky, let's see how this goes, Han Solo, devil may care pose, right? It's, I've been trained in marksmanship at a very expensive school pose.
Yeah, no, it added to it. And I remember we knew some blaster fire was coming, but when they released the teaser scene, I was just like, intense whispering. Oh no, intense blaster fights as well. Love it.
Intense blaster fights as well. All right. Shall we move on from action to comedy and whimsy?
Yes, because there was both. Yes.
Yeah, I was worried that this show might be super good, but really, really taking itself very seriously.
I was too.
I was just delighted at the moments of comedy and whimsy, and I think some of the moments are just character building comedy, and I think a lot of them are like that line is deeply meaningful, but there's something so human about it, something so tragic about it that it's also like, to me, funny. So not that it isn't serious, but it is also laugh out loud funny at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was my big picture take on the comedy and whimsy. What did you think of it, and what are some of your favorite moments?
So much heart and whimsy from B2 Emo, like a droid making me cry again. Like I just, what are you doing? But it also tracks with, whatever Gilroy had with the third act of Rogue One and beyond, and depending on the stories you hear, he had a lot to do with all the acts of Rogue One. But K2SO, you and I just talked about on our Star Wars Rank, his death really affects me in that one. And the whole thing of choice of our programming. So the fact that B2 Emo has, he lies, he loses energy, he has feelings, emotions. It seems like there's something there. It worked. And it's just from the beginning. I mentioned that opening scene. I call it B2 Emo fights the system. Those hounds peeing on him and him fighting back. It is really telling. I love that. And then the line, and it's Dave Chapman, who's done a lot of work. He's part of the BB-8 team as well. But I love the voice. Marva said, "You're ruining your health and reputation with friends of low character." She told him sooner or later you're going to get yourself into trouble you couldn't get out of. Love that line. It's very telling of what Marva feels of this adopted child she loves and what he's been up to. It's comedy with purpose, art with communication.
Yeah, there were some non-B2 Emo lines for sure, and moments that I wanted to share. But yeah, B2 Emo was the star.
He really was.
I think in the canon of Star Wars, the droids have always had this sort of personality, right? It's been one of the things that have created that everybody has meaning, everybody has value. Some characters don't think much of droids, and then other characters like Luke or Anakin really see their humanity, and really, everybody giving BB-8 scritches and checking on his antenna, and in that great legacy, I think what is strong about B2 Emo is the love for the Andor family, right? There's a little bit of that sense of like, I am told different rules about human interaction, about when I can say what, but I don't fully get it, so I blurt things out, right? There's some of that great sincere comedy of like I've felt it sometimes, like, honestly, grew up in Minneapolis and in LA for a while, and every once in a while I come back to Minneapolis and I just accidentally, like, I don't know that somebody broke up or that somebody is and just say something like, "Ooh, whoops, okay."
Can I speak now?
Yes, like, "Ooh, should I not have listed that X in the lineup? Was that did other people not know that those two people dated? Whoops, sorry." Like that vibe from B2 Emo, and the biggest thing, right, of just like the older, right, of the really beat up, really not working as well. But really trying. I mean, there's, connections you could make to the physical wear and tear, but like, not to get too melodramatic with it, but like, I think there's a lot of trauma in our entire society. And I think a lot of us have this, like, sincerely just trying to get through this day. And I get peed on, and I don't have enough energy to lie. And I don't know what this person needs from me. And this technology is broken. And like, I think it makes him extremely relatable. I think there's a lot of, for all of us on different levels, that in me energy when we see B2 Emo.
Yeah, I think at some point in my real life, I'm going to say pause for data lag.
That was my first. Line, halting for data lag. Like, extremely relatable. I didn't see it fully when I watched in the screener, but I believe in the second episode, when he's sitting in his little charging tub. He's docked like an iPhone. Oh, that's great. So great. I can speak now is great. That whole fiery exchange between Andor and Marva is great, where Marva lists off all of the women, and then without being asked, B2 Emo pipes up and Bix.
She got nothing to do with this.
Yeah. And it is not a humor moment, but it is a B2 emo connection moment when they're going to pull his power charger out and he rolls forward and goes, no.
Oh,
right?
yes.
I want, because like, please can I burst into this reality and protect B2 emo?
Totally, man. Oh gosh. And then again, the end sequence. Marv is crying and I'm crying, but with B2 emo kind of has that like hangdog expression. It just got me.
Yeah,
got me.
Doesn't want Andor to leave. Doesn't want Cassian to leave. All right. Well, we'll be talking more about B2 emo for sure, and can't wait to see B2 emo's journey in the show, and seeing B2 emo a little bit more young and fit was powerful as well. Yeah. So what are some other moments of comedy or whimsy or humor that got you?
One started, it was literally some of the first lines, and it's the bouncer when he like does the check and everything. He's like, upstairs lounge is closed tonight. I wouldn't call that a joke. I wouldn't call it funny. It's one of my favorite lines. You want to talk about real world Star Wars. You want to talk about building the lore or building the world. That was amazingly real. And then, when the other group's coming up, hey, it's just like, I don't know. It was so it set the tone of, this is what we're doing. Like, it was delivered, and it wasn't just the line existing. It was the way it was delivered. It's like, yep, we are definitely doing something different here.
Yep. Like, here's the normal list of things I tell every guest every time they enter the club about know this, know that. And here's the thing I have to add tonight is like, and we're out of the special. We don't have clam chowder, Yeah. And I think, once you go back to it, it really builds that picture that's, the expensive brothel. And a lot of the Primor people seem like they're also just trying to get through their day job, right?
Yeah.
Mosk and Karn are trying to make something of this, and a lot of the other people are like, but I'd have to filter the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it helps paint a picture too that it's not booming business at the brothel tonight.
No. Yeah, love that there.
Go ahead.
I was just, I think my mind immediately goes to the Nurchi and Vetch scene, which is Vetch is on loan from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It was amazing. Love that. You need to work this bad. What? Just great.
Yeah. He said all I needed to do was stand here.
He's gonna read some Vogon poetry after this. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. A couple of things I liked. I liked the way that the picture of the fact that Cassian has lots of relationships when people are asking him about his wound, and Bix says, did you fall on a jealous husband?
Yeah.
That was a nice zinger. That entire first scene with Karn and Chief Hine, we both talked about that actor. He's so great. Everything he's saying is meaningful, powerful, depressing in some ways, but the way he says it, the choice of words is extremely funny. The coming up with the story of what happened to them. We don't need a parade.
Yeah.
Come up with something sad but inspiring in a mundane sort of way. That to me is like the comedy of parody, right? The comedy of the way we know that news gets spun in our real world to hit this exact emotional beat of like this is how we want people to react to it. That line in particular, but almost every line he says made me laugh in a dark way.
Dark, very very dark way. But yes, no, it's a spectacular scene for so many reasons. But there's some inherent comedy in there.
Yeah. Yep, and you and I both referenced it already, but Cyril Karn's adjustments to his suit of like adjust your suit, that's pockets, piping, some light tailoring. It's so funny.
It's so God, it really is. It's telling, but funny.
Yeah, I have just a couple more. How about you? What else you got?
That's pretty much the big ones for me. I mean, there's all the way through, but again, the comedy comes from a real spot. And look, sometimes, sometimes Star Wars has broad humor and it's not for everyone. And sometimes I enjoy it and other times it doesn't hit as much or the impact is lessened over time when you see it again and again. But this is very well written without a doubt. And I love the way a lot of the comedy moments found their way to the screen.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, there are just a couple other kind of characters of whimsy, some specific comedy lines, but more just that sense of the fantastic that is really important to me in Star Wars. A big one being the time grappler, which I think a lot of us have loved since that trailer. But really getting to see him announcing the end of the workday and then the beginning of the workday. All the shots of how seriously he takes his job, the precision, right? And the grunts is in love with the time grappler. I saw some people already very excited by the character Willie, the person I'm calling entitled invasive mass transit hat guy.
He's something else. He was great.
Right. And I think this is what the power of this day-to-day storytelling. You can kind of ask yourself like that's funny. We all know, that's like any time you've ever been on a plane, a bus, a train, right? And somebody starts a conversation when you're clearly like everything is radiating. I don't need a conversation. So you can kind of almost ask yourself why it's there, but I think he's so supportive of the themes, right? He's so entitled. Ferrix is so beneath him. These changes are no good. He's so invasive in people's truth, right? With say, oh, you don't have to tell me. I know I started a conversation that you don't want. Then I got up and moved over and demanded more truth from you.
Yeah. Franny agrees about that.
Is Franny okay?
She's okay. She's really enjoys that sequence. No, it's what's interesting about his name is Willie, or people calling him Willie?
No, in the credits it appears to be Willie, Willi.
Like Willie Loman. Got it. I love everything about this because he has this great line, never changes, doesn't it? You know what they say? What's that? If you can't find it here, it's not worth finding, which is important for Luthen going into town. But it's literally like an old 1950s styles bus, right? He's got the old kind of like going to the day at the office with a briefcase and fedora kind of look. And you're right. He's talking about struggling with the change. He's talking about this bad side of town. Watch your wallet. And you talk about what's that play with real world politics, but just also points of view, perspectives, culture clashes, and refusal to change, refusal to acknowledge those beneath you that you feel is beneath you. It's again very telling stuff, all wrapped up in that guy in the subway we all know.
Yep. Yeah. After you've been here for 2 weeks, you can still taste it. Nasty. Yeah. Yep. And you're right. He is a traveling booster salesperson.
Yeah.
Apparently, like Willie Loman, he thinks he has the bad territory.
Yes.
That's not going to work out for him. He just had the good territory. Final thing for me, I am in love with the stairs droid. That it's not, a physical object they pull over. It's a droid built to be stairs to disembark a 50 space bus. Oh, this is the kind of stuff that, like, honestly, I could have taken a little bit more of in Rogue One, and I was a little afraid for myself and my own taste wouldn't be there. Those just kind of that fantastic world building that is on the edge of absurdity, right? That's what makes it. We can be grounded. We can get into the day to day. We can do all those things. We can get closer and closer to, direct parallels to the real world. But from my taste in Star Wars, I still just want some like the weird and the fantastic. And I was so happy to see a droid who exists to be stairs.
Add it to your collection today, kids. Yeah, I love it. It's up there with the Arrested Development stairs car as far as stairs I want to collect. But no, and I know what you mean too. Of just there was a lot of little details right from the beginning that I was just very happy to see. It definitely feels like Rogue One, looks like Rogue One. Rogue One has a lot of it there, but we're allowed to live with it a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. The some of the designs, in the beginning when Cassian's walking down to the brothel, the aliens and the people and beans and the bubbles. Yeah, it's like human ads. Really otherworldly. I still want to feel like Star Wars is otherworldly,
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to a segment that we've added specifically for Andor. It would be weird to add it in other shows. Favorite Luthen line or noise?
I have to choose just one of each. There's so many wonderful things, and some of these we did heard before, but like these days when Cassian Andor is great. It rings in the air. I loved I was hoping for a more relaxed conversation.
Yep.
But the big line, man, don't you want to fight these bastards for real? Wonderful. Stellan Skarsgård. We expect nothing less but perfection from him, and he's delivering.
Yeah. No, I wrote down 4 because I didn't know which you would go for. The kind of I expected this to just be our fun section, but I just did want to shout out that moment where he's still trying to sell Cassian, right, and convince him, but he's kind of walking away and he's kind of talking to himself, and you feel like he's talking about his own experiences about the voice of the Empire and saying the sound of that voice telling you to stop, to go, to move, telling you to die, like. It's easy to say authoritarianism is bad because it takes away people's freedom. That's basically what he's saying, right? But he's saying it in a visceral way of like, it's in my bones, it's in my soul, the pain of being controlled, my entire life being controlled by this voice of power. So I just thought that was really powerful and got me really excited to know Luthen's backstory.
Yeah, a lot more come with him. I can't wait.
Yeah. So the couple of pick for I love Luthen's flair on his credit display. Like he didn't have to go that hard.
No,
he could have held his hand up with a showing them all. I also really I put slap charges on the door because I just like the phrase slap charges.
Slap charges.
Brace yourself, and then immediate boom. And final one is hard to pick. It's when they have discovered based on the fleeing aliens which house Karn is hiding in. And Cassian has a blaster on him, and you don't even see Luthen. You just hear, kill him.
Yes.
And then when it doesn't happen, you hear, I'll kill him. And it's violent and it's scary, but it reminded me of this thing from my cultural life growing up in Minnesota, where nobody wants to take the last piece of pizza, nobody wants to be rude, right? And then somebody eventually breaks, usually after drinks, and like there's one piece of pizza left. Eat it. I'll eat it then. And it felt like that to me. Kill him. All right, I'll kill him.
Love that. It's great. It's great.
So good. So good. Is there anything in our epic first episode of the Andor Report that we haven't touched on that you wanted to?
I think, let's see. We did touch upon the time grappler. I want an old classic Kenner figure. I'll hopefully get something from him, but that is the character you'd get at J.J. Newberry in the bargain bin. You're like, is this even a Star Wars character? And then he become your favorite. Everything about that. I can't wait to find out more about Marva's decision. I think we did talk about it. One of the things I want to shout out, we definitely mentioned the character, but Bix Kayleen, Adria Arjona is amazing. Wonderful. I think such a key part of it, part of the big themes, and worked in a lot of ways. And look, I think a lot is going to be talked about. There's some, express sexuality in a way that we have not seen in Star Wars. Really, we've read it, but you talked about it up top. We've read about it, but to actually see it, she brought so much to it, and I'm so intrigued by it. And she, especially that third episode, with what happens to her, the loss of Tim. I just want to make sure we're highlighting that character, and I know we will more going forward. But love the work.
Yeah, no, she is so powerful and such an interesting character of somebody who is figuring out a way to function right within this world. That talking about surface truth and real truth. Her conversation, with Solomon, right, of the code. In order to even get into that space. Really powerful to see this person who is striving hard to lead a real life among this horror and is being further directly affected by the horror by the end when she's, having violence enacted on her for no reason, right? No reason at all. And then with Tim, and then just the quick thing I'll say about the just kind of healthy, normal sexuality of like, I'm dating this guy. I like him. There's some tension in our relationship, but I do want this relationship, and I'm going for it. That stuff is in the books. Absolutely. And for me, I think it was, I'm certainly open to hearing all sorts of other opinions, but I did like that it was just like, to me, it was just sort of presented that it wasn't glamorized, in my opinion. It was, sex is a part of life. So is CAF. So is going to work. So is dealing with exes. So is worrying about money. This is a part of the experience of being alive and being human. Yeah.
And that's part of seeing this side of Star Wars. And I do like that this is presented differently, and it worked for me. But I remember you and I we were having some conversations off air. It was odd. The first viewing when she goes over and she starts to kind of disrobe a bit there. I literally went like, no, we don't, no, we don't do that here. We don't do that in Star Wars. No. So I had to push through that, and I think in the end, it's really well done.
Yeah. And I really want to say this is the way that I received it. And I want to be very open to hearing all of the interpretations of how lots of different people received it, you know,
absolutely.
And not make assumptions about what other people think or feel, just stating my opinion on that one. And maybe it will change after I hear more. But I was happy to just see kind of normal, you know, space human sexuality.
Yeah.
The thing that I want to be sure to touch on is the music, right?
Yes.
Always a big discussion in Star Wars, especially as we get these Disney Plus shows and the Star Wars buffet with different flavors. More dishes get added to the buffet. One of the big things that's spices that change the flavor is the music. Nicholas Britell, who's done a bunch, but I know him from Succession. I thought the music was pretty amazing. I loved that it was haunting. It was sort of, there were moments where it's kind of sad and muddy and jangling. It felt like emotions bubbling and then explosions, right? Which is great. But one of the things I was just really affected by, we had known that there was going to be different versions of the credits, right? And at the end of episode 2, when right after Willie Space Loman's line about if you can't find it here, you can't find it anywhere, and Andor, the shot of Andor being like, he is the thing that people want, and the music explodes into this very rock beat. What was fascinating to me about that is a lot of times percussion in Star Wars is orchestral. You know, it's timpani, it's big cymbals, it's chimes and wood blocks. That might have been electronic, but what I heard was a human at a rock set. That was a hi-hat and a 14-inch snare and a fill from a snare to a tom. It was, I could feel that in my bones. That's a drum set like I own, like my dad taught me to play on. That really hit me, and I really like that variety.
Yeah, I'm really glad you highlighted that and share your personal connection to it. I really love that. That's because I wasn't, with this type of score, you're not humming anything yet, right? Maybe you are, but for the most part, you're not humming Yoda's theme. It's a little different, and they talked about the vocabulary of Star Wars music, but really, it fits in right. It fits in with the show. It fits in with Star Wars Galaxy. I love that ending. Yeah, it was rock. It was rock with a little industrial. It was like a David Bowie remix of Little Wonder. It was just like something else out there, and that really stuck with me. And then the third episode ending with the music, I was like just hearing. I'm not great at picking out tunes and everything, but like I wasn't humming it on the way to the comedy show. I just was hearing it in my head, and it was haunting me in all the best ways. So really love what they're doing. And that's the thing. Sometimes new is going to feel real new until it becomes what you know and love.
Yep, absolutely. So, that was great. Any predictions or hopes for next episode or, the show?
Yeah, this is where, we're wondering. I want to race up that class elevator to Mon Mothma, not glass, class. Definitely can't wait for more Luthen, but with a wig. And then I'm tracking Cyril Karn, man. For me, is again, I don't want to say standout like he stole the show. Everyone was firing on all cylinders, especially B2 Emo. But there's just something on. He makes me wonderfully uneasy. Like it's the center of a lot of things going on in this story that is about Andor. That's about other big concepts. But him, the way Kyle Solar's playing it, I want more Cyril Karn imploding, and I want to see where that goes.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see a little bit more of why he is the way he is. And I think that to your prediction, we're going to see his opportunity to learn and very possibly not taking it.
Yes.
And, he started this on Ferrix by not approaching it in a better way. And it looks like he's just going to escalate, right? To prove himself. And, Bix and many other people are probably not going to receive that well, right? And we've seen hints of that in the trailer. So I'm very excited for that. I'm really excited for quality Mothman time, of course. And I'm also excited to find out how much of Cassian's history is going to be filled in. The talk of the hanging of his father, his Imperial record, insurrection, destruction of Imperial property, assault on an Imperial soldier. If we're going to see some of that story. what the kind of flashback structure is. I'm really excited about. And then the last big thing is Luthen and Cassian are launching off, to go, kind of get in, loser. We're going to do a rebellion kind of vibe. But I don't think Cassian is quite ready to be involved in the fight yet. I think he needs his sister more than he needs the fight, and is that going to be attention, And then final thing is, I'm real excited about how much does Luthen care about Cassian as a person, or has Luthen tipped into that Saw Gerrera-like place where he does care about Cassian, but he's so motivated he can't stop himself from seeing Cassian as a tool and a means to an end.
It's a great point. Because I love Luthen, but yeah, you're right. There's a little strain of that, and good stuff.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. You already talked about a little bit what we always wrap up these report shows on, of what merch we would want based on these episodes, because that's a part of the fun of Star Wars. I'm right there with you. I need a Time Grappler action figure. What other merch would you want based on the first 3 episodes of Andor?
Oh, it's easy. Outside of the desire for a real life B2 emo, I do think we need the first ever Lego Star Wars brothel set. Like, let's lean into what the show's doing here. I love that they have usually the cute little Lego title. So let's just call it, Cassian kills officers playset scene. Like, let's lean into it. Just lean into it. You get the brothel hostess minifig. Like, you get all of it.
Yeah. With this is the party house Lego set. Yeah. I want just the closed upstairs room in Lego form.
Upstairs lounge is closed. Yeah.
The closed upstairs lounge. Build it, kids. That is absolutely great.
I want the old style Kenner commercials where it's like, you can open up the upstairs lounge if you want. Batteries included.
Surprise. Saw Gerrera's in the upstairs lounge.
Yes.
Yeah. Would love that. I need a Stairs Droid action figure in every scale immediately. That's my most desired action figure. I'm so taken with B2 Emo's little charging pod. I want one for my phone. B2 Emo's in it, but it's in this little charging thing, but you can slip your phone in there and your phone can charge up. Not to tell lies on social media, but just to charge up with B2 Emo. Yeah. And final thing, obviously action figure, but I also want a Time Grappler alarm clock.
God, Grace would leave me, but yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think I would bring it home and I'd be so thrilled with it, and then it would probably become unpopular, and I would maybe have to not use it as an alarm clock, but just as a statue. Cool. So cool. All right, that is our.
I'm sorry. I'm dealing with a lot of back pain, right? Like, I'm still got this back pain. I got a doctor's appointment coming. Who knows what's on the way for my back? But I just could not. I couldn't escape the pain that just probably shoots down his arms into his back and hips and legs with hitting that the time the Time Grappler, hitting the time machine, hitting the rock. It just hurt me, but I loved it.
Oh, he needs some stretching. He needs some Bacta. He's walking up those stairs, up and down those stairs. I didn't see any elevator. He's walking up and down those stairs every time.
Yeah. When he does
twice
that
a
breath,
day.
Yeah. When he does the breath, it's so good. It's so good. Love it.
It is amazing. Yeah. Chef's kiss 1,000 times. That is our epic look at the first 3 episodes of Andor. We are very excited for more. Excited to hear what other people think, all that kind of stuff. But for now, Ken, where can people find us?
Hey, we are the Force Center podcast feed, and we love going in deep on Star Wars episodes, media, and the like. So if you want to follow us and join the party there, do so by reaching out on Twitter at Force Center Pod. We're on Instagram and YouTube as well. On YouTube, we like doing monthly live Q&As and more. Check us out over there. Give us a sub if you'd like. You can find the podcast in a lot of spots. Oh, also on Facebook at Force Center Podcast. We're on Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Just search, you'll find us. Hey, if you want to leave a review when you're there, we'd appreciate that. Merch is available at tpublic.com/user/Force Center. I have talked so long today with no water that you can tell in my mouth there. And finally, you can support us directly at patreon.com/Force Center. You can follow me at Napzok or go to my website, napzok.com for more. You, sir.
Yes, you can find me on all the social media. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is at Joseph Scrimshaw. You can check out my website, josephscrimshaw.com, to links to comedy albums, future shows, all kinds of stuff like that. Links to my YouTube page. I've been asking people to subscribe and watch some videos to get back to monetization, and so many Force Center listeners have been doing that. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for the stairs droid, for Tim's socks, and so many other exciting things, this has been the Andor Report.